The wind howls through abandoned corridors, metal creaking in the darkness. Marcus Reynolds stands face to face with Alexander Blackwood in the dimly lit storage room of the National Archives. The metal container holding the Rhodium 103 glows faintly between them, casting eerie shadows across the walls. Sullivan lies wounded against the far wall, blood seeping through her makeshift bandage. Blackwood levels his gun at Sullivan's head, his expression cold and calculating. "Give me the activation code now or she dies." Marcus glances down at his father's journal and the key in his palm. His voice is steady despite the chaos. "You don't understand what this is really about. This was never just about the material." In the distance, the heavy footsteps of a tactical team echo through the marble hallways, growing closer by the second. Blackwood's face tightens. "We're out of time, Reynolds. Make your choice." 15 months earlier. The alarm clock blares at 5:00 a.m., its harsh tone cutting through the silence of Marcus Reynolds' one-bedroom apartment. At 42, Marcus moves with the stiffness of a man whose body protests the early hour. His apartment is clean but sparse, a testament to a life pared down to essentials. In the kitchenette, he makes instant coffee and toast, eating while standing at the counter. His eyes drift to the refrigerator, where a photo of his son Jamie is held by a magnet. 12 years old now, growing up 2 hours away with his mother and her new husband. Marcus touches the photo briefly. "See you this weekend, buddy." His janitor's uniform hangs pressed in the bathroom, blue work pants and a button-up shirt with Eagle Point High School embroidered on the pocket. Some habits from his father never faded. A man takes pride in his appearance, no matter the job. The ancient Ford pickup coughs reluctantly to life. The dashboard clock is permanently stuck at 4:17. The radio only picks up 2 stations, and the heater works when it feels like it. Today it doesn't. Eagle Point High School rises dark and silent as Marcus arrives at 5:45 a.m. For the next hour, this space belongs only to him. He moves with unexpected grace, checking each classroom methodically. In room 104, he kneels beside the problematic radiator, toolkit in hand. His fingers work with practiced precision, a testament to the mechanical aptitude that once promised a different life. His father had taught him about mechanical systems before Marcus could even read. James Reynolds had a way with machines that bordered on intuitive, could diagnose an engine problem just by listening. Before the steel mill accident took him, he'd been teaching Marcus everything he knew. The morning bell transforms the peaceful emptiness into chaotic adolescent energy. Marcus becomes invisible, pressing himself against walls as teenagers flow past. Principal Garfield strides through, expensive shoes leaving slush marks on the freshly mopped floors. "Morning, Reynolds. The boys' bathroom on the second floor is backed up again. Take care of it before first period." "Yes, sir. I'll handle it." By lunchtime, the cafeteria becomes a war zone of spilled milk and discarded pizza. A half-eaten sandwich sails through the air, landing at Marcus's feet. 10 points, a voice calls out from a table of Letterman jackets. "Hey, mop bucket, thanks for the cleanup." Marcus picks up the sandwich without comment and drops it in his trash bag. The voice belongs to Victor Hammond Jr., son of the auto shop owner and star quarterback. After the final bell, Marcus completes his closing rounds, checking every door, every window, resetting the alarm system. Miss Winters, the English teacher, is scraping ice from her windshield with a credit card. Marcus approaches, offering his ice scraper. She accepts with a grateful smile, one of the few who sees him. "Thank you, Marcus. I always forget mine." "No problem, Miss Winters. Looks like more snow coming tonight." The truck rattles down Main Street in Pinehurst, a once prosperous town now faded like an old photograph. The steel mill closed in '92, and nothing moved in to replace it. Marcus checks his mailbox out of habit, not expecting anything beyond bills. Today, there's an envelope that doesn't belong. Heavy cream paper with his name typed formally. Marcus James Reynolds. The return address reads, Hargrove, Wilkins, and Peterson, attorneys at law. Inside his apartment, Marcus opens it carefully. The letter is equally formal, the language stiff and official. "Dear Mr. Reynolds, as the designated executor of the estate of Colonel Robert J. Reynolds, United States Army, retired, I regret to inform you of his passing. As his sole surviving heir, you are hereby bequeathed the property known as Sentinel Ridge Facility including all structures, contents, and associated land, approximately 142 acres. Marcus reads the letter 3 times. Uncle Robert, a man he hasn't seen in 20 years. The black sheep of the family who disappeared into government work and resurfaced occasionally for Christmas with pockets full of candy and stories he couldn't finish. The uncle who always ruffled Marcus's hair and said, "You're smarter than you know, kid." And now he's dead and has left Marcus a military base. The morning sun filters through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Blackwood Defense Technologies headquarters. Alexander Blackwood stands at the head of a conference table, his tall frame perfectly outlined in a tailored charcoal suit. At 58, his silver hair and sharp features give him a distinguished appearance that commands attention. Project Daybreak represents the future of quantum computing and material science, Blackwood says, his voice resonant and confident. The proprietary materials we're developing will revolutionize everything from medical imaging to weapons guidance systems. Howard Chen, the company's CFO, leans forward. "Alex, the R&D expenditures for Daybreak have exceeded projections by 30%. The shareholders are getting nervous. What's our timeline for marketable applications?" Blackwood's smile doesn't falter, but something hardens in his eyes. The race for quantum supremacy doesn't follow quarterly projections, Howard. After the meeting, his executive assistant follows him with a tablet. "Sir, Colonel Robert Reynolds passed away 3 days ago in Pennsylvania. Natural causes." Blackwood stops, staring out at the Washington skyline. "Is that all?" "No, sir. Reynolds left his property to a nephew, Marcus Reynolds, 42, resident of Pinnerest, Pennsylvania, employed as a janitor at the local high school. Divorced, 1 child." Blackwood takes the tablet, studying Marcus's DMV photo, a broad-shouldered man with thinning brown hair and tired eyes. Nothing remarkable about him. "Gregory, have Thompson prepare the jet, and tell Dr. Harlow I need him to accelerate the acquisition timeline for Project Daybreak. We've just had a stroke of luck." When Gregory leaves, Blackwood retrieves a worn leather folder from his wall safe. Inside is a black and white photograph. 5 men in military uniforms standing before a concrete bunker. One face is circled in faded red ink, a younger Robert Reynolds. Blackwood studies the image. "After all these years, old man. After all these years." The next morning at the Pinnerest Diner, Marcus nurses a cup of coffee. Victor Hammond Sr. strides in, all 6'2" of him, filling the doorway before he ducks inside. "Well, well," Hammond's voice carries across the diner. "If it isn't the newest property owner in Pinnerest." Hammond slides into the booth uninvited. "Heard you got yourself a real estate windfall, Reynolds. Old man Hargrove was talking about it at the Elks Lodge last night." Marcus says nothing, takes another sip of coffee. Sentinel Ridge, Hammond leans forward, his voice dropping. "You know what that place is, right? Cold War relic, government dumping ground. Your uncle was the only one crazy enough to buy it when they shut it down. It was his. Now it's mine," Marcus says simply. Hammond barks a laugh. "What are you going to do with it? Turn it into a tourist trap? Come see the saddest hole in the ground in Pennsylvania." He smirks. "I'll give you 5 grand for it right now, not for sale. 10 grand then. Final offer." Marcus meets his gaze. "I said it's not for sale." Hammond's expression shifts. "Your funeral. When you change your mind, and you will, you know where to find me." By the time Marcus gets to work, the story has reached Eagle Point High. "Hey, Mop Bucket," a senior calls out. "Heard you inherited Area 51. Going to introduce us to your alien friends?" After his shift, Marcus drives toward the foothills. A faded sign marks a turnoff. "Restricted area. Government property. No trespassing." Someone has spray-painted "Mutants Inside" across the bottom. The road narrows, climbing higher until it ends at a chain-link fence topped with rusted barbed wire. Beyond the fence, concrete buildings nestle into the hillside. A large radar dish sits atop the largest building, frozen in position. Marcus approaches the gate cautiously. The padlock is solid, well-maintained. The key from the attorney's envelope slides in smoothly, turns with a satisfying click. The chain falls away, and Marcus pushes the gate open with a screech of metal. The main building looms ahead, a 2-story concrete bunker with SR1 stenciled beside its heavy door. Marcus tries the key, another entrance granted. He pushes the door open slowly. The air that rushes out is cool, stale, carrying the scent of old paper and machinery long dormant. Fluorescent lights flicker to life, illuminating a reception area frozen in time. A hallway leads deeper into the building. The corridor branches, left toward offices, right toward what looks like a command center. He chooses right. The room contains the workstations arranged in concentric rings around a central platform. On the walls, maps of Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union mark installations, missile sites, troop movements. Red pins and blue pins frozen in an eternal standoff. Marcus moves to the central platform. A desk there is larger than the others, the nameplate reading CO R.J. Reynolds commanding. His uncle's desk. The top drawer is empty. Another contains only paper clips. The third is locked. Marcus searches the desk surface, finding a small lever hidden beneath the lip. He pulls it, and the locked drawer slides open. Inside lies a leather-bound journal. The first page bears his uncle's name and a date, September 12, 1962. Marcus reads entries about Project Granite Shadow in the Cuban Missile Crisis. His uncle's tone changes dramatically on October 27, 1962. Granite Shadow is not what they told us. God help me. I've seen the actual orders. This isn't defense. It's first strike. Unauthorized. The president doesn't know. The final entry, dated December 1st, 1962, offered early retirement with ownership of this facility in recognition of distinguished service. In other words, keep quiet and disappear. I'm taking the deal, but not for the reasons they think. Sentinel Ridge still has a purpose. The shadow remain, waiting for light. Marcus continues exploring. Beyond the command center, signs mark different sections. Communications, analysis, barracks, storage. At the end of the storage hallway stands a steel door with a combination lock. Beside it, a plaque reads, SR Shadow Archive. Returning to his uncle's desk, Marcus discovers a false bottom in a drawer containing a photograph of 5 men in military uniform. He recognizes his uncle and, surprisingly, his father. Written on the back, Project Granite Shadow Team, left to right, Major N. Williams, Captain R.R. Reynolds, self, Lieutenant J. Reynolds, Dr. Sullivan, Dr. Blackwood, October 1962. Lieutenant J. Reynolds, his father. Marcus stares at the photo, his mind racing. His father had never mentioned serving here. According to family stories, James Reynolds had been a mechanic in Germany during the Cold War before returning to work in the steel mill. Beneath the names, a series of numbers is written in faint pencil, 27 to 14, 03, 1962, a combination. Marcus returns to the Shadow Archive door. He spins the dial carefully. A click. The handle turns. Inside, his flashlight reveals shelves of file boxes and a large object covered by a tarp. Marcus pulls the tarp away, uncovering a metal container approximately the size of a refrigerator, with a keypad and display panel. From the shelves, Marcus takes a file box labeled Shadow Documentation. Inside, he finds documents describing rhodium-103, a rare isotope with unique properties, superconductivity at room temperature, quantum entanglement capabilities, military applications worth billions. As Marcus reads about deployment scenarios targeting Cuba, he hears footsteps approaching. He hides beside the door as 2 people enter, a woman with military bearing and an older man carrying a tablet. Power's still on, the woman notes, examining the container's keypad. Reynolds was thorough, the man replies. Independent generator system. The colonel thought of everything, except dying before passing on the activation codes. As they try various code sequences, Marcus accidentally makes a noise. They whirl toward him, the woman's flashlight catching him full in the face. I'm Marcus Reynolds. This is my property. The woman lowers her light slightly. Marcus Reynolds, Colonel Robert Reynolds' nephew? Yes. Who are you and why are you breaking into my facility? I'm Dr. Elaine Sullivan, Department of Defense. This is Dr. Harper. We're here on official business. Sullivan, the name from the photograph, related to Dr. Sullivan who worked here in 1962? Elaine is David Sullivan's daughter, Harper confirms. We're retrieving classified material that was never properly decommissioned. With all due respect, Marcus says, this facility belongs to me now. My uncle left it to me. Your uncle's ownership was conditional, Sullivan counters. Certain materials remain government property. Then why sneak in? Why not show official paperwork? Before Sullivan can answer, the metal container begins beeping, its display illuminating. A scanning beam emerges, passing over the room before stopping on Marcus. The beam turns green. DNA confirmation. Reynolds, MJ, a mechanical voice requests voice authorization. Marcus, drawn forward by curiosity, states his full name. Identity confirmed. Welcome, Lieutenant Reynolds. The container opens, revealing rows of metal cylinders and a small lockbox containing microfilm and a recording device. My God, Sullivan breathes. It's all here, the entire production run. Marcus grabs the lockbox before Sullivan can reach it. This stays with me until I know what's going on. Their standoff is interrupted by the sound of vehicles outside. Black SUVs, government plates. That's not us, Sullivan says. We came alone. Blackwood, she explains quickly. Alexander Blackwood. Dr. Richard Blackwood's son. The last person who should get his hands on this material. As footsteps approach the main entrance, Sullivan makes an urgent offer. Come with us and bring that evidence. Or stay and explain to Blackwood's men why you're trespassing on restricted government property. This is my property, Marcus insists. Not for long, if Blackwood has his way. He has connections in Washington. Once he claims national security, your inheritance won't matter. A loud bang echoes through the facility. Someone forcing the main door. Decision time, Mr. Reynolds, Harper says urgently. Marcus thinks of his uncle's journal, of his father in that photograph, of 60 years of secrets. Lead the way, he says, but the evidence stays with me. Sullivan nods. There's a maintenance tunnel that leads to an emergency exit. We need to move now. As they slip away, voices echo behind them. Marcus follows Sullivan deeper into Sentinel Ridge, the lockbox tucked under his arm, his uncle's journal in his pocket. The life he knew, the simple existence of a school janitor, falls away with each step, replaced by something more dangerous, more important. For the first time in years, Marcus Reynolds is no longer invisible. The maintenance tunnel smells of rust and stagnant water. Marcus follows Sullivan's bobbing flashlight beam, hunched over to avoid the low ceiling. Behind them, Harper struggles to keep pace, wheezing slightly as they navigate the narrow passage. Where does this lead? Marcus whispers, clutching the lockbox against his chest. The microfilm inside feels impossibly fragile. 60-year-old evidence of a conspiracy that could still burn the world down. Northern Ridge, Sullivan replies without turning. About half a mile from here. Your uncle showed my father this escape route when they worked together. Said it was their insurance policy. The tunnel narrows, concrete walls giving way to rough-hewn rock. This section was blasted out of the mountain itself, reinforced with timber supports that groan under the weight of decades. They knew this might happen, Marcus realizes. They built an escape route because they expected someone to come after them. Robert Reynolds was nothing if not prepared, Harper says between labored breaths. Your uncle had contingencies for his contingencies. A sound from behind them, distant but unmistakable. Voices echoing through the tunnel. They found the entrance. Sullivan quickens her pace. Move faster. They push forward, feet splashing through shallow puddles. The air grows fresher as they approach a steel ladder leading upward. Sullivan goes first, pushing against a heavy metal cover. It lifts with a protesting screech, revealing a patch of night sky sprinkled with stars. One by one, they emerge into a small clearing surrounded by pine trees. The exit is disguised as an old storm drain covered with moss and fallen leaves. From 100 yards away, no one would notice it. My truck's back at the main gate, Marcus says. We're not going that way. Sullivan points down a narrow trail. I parked off the service road on the north side. Old logging route that doesn't show up on maps anymore. Harper replaces the drain cover, carefully arranging leaves over it. This will slow them down, but not for long. Blackwood's people are thorough. They trek through the dark forest, guided only by Sullivan's flashlight and occasional glimpses of moonlight through the trees. The temperature has dropped, their breath forming small clouds in the night air. You still haven't told me what Radium 103 really is, Marcus says as they walk, or who Alexander Blackwood is, or why any of this matters 60 years after the Cuban Missile Crisis. Sullivan glances back at him. Let's get to safety first. Then I'll tell you everything I know, which might not be much. Your uncle kept secrets from everyone, including the Pentagon, Harper adds. 20 minutes later, they reach a black Jeep Cherokee parked on an overgrown logging road. Sullivan unlocks it with a key fob, motioning for them to get in quickly. "Put the evidence in here," she says, opening a hidden compartment beneath the rear cargo area, shielded against tracking signals. Marcus hesitates, still clutching the lockbox. "You seem awfully prepared for someone who just happened to be looking for old classified material." A flicker of something, annoyance, respect, crosses Sullivan's face. "I've been looking for this for 10 years, Mr. Reynolds, since my father died and left me his own journals. Now please, we need to move." Marcus places the lockbox in the compartment, but keeps his uncle's journal in his jacket pocket. Sullivan doesn't object. The Jeep growls to life, headlights cutting through the darkness as they begin the careful journey down the abandoned logging road. Harper sits in the back, the container with rhodium cylinders secure beside him. "Where are we going?" Marcus asks as the Jeep bounces over ruts and exposed roots. "Farmhouse about 40 miles from here," Sullivan replies, eyes on the rough road. "Off the grid, secure. Your safe house?" "One of them." They drive in silence for several minutes, eventually reaching a paved secondary road. Sullivan keeps the speed moderate, not slow enough to attract attention, not fast enough to risk being pulled over. Alexander Blackwood, she finally says, is the CEO of Blackwood Defense Technologies, son of Richard Blackwood, who was part of the original Granite Shadow team with your uncle and my father. I saw his name in the photograph. Marcus nods. "But what's his interest in this now? Why come after the rhodium after all these years?" Harper leans forward from the back seat. "Because rhodium 103 isn't just valuable, Mr. Reynolds. It's game-changing. The isotope your uncle helped develop has properties that modern science is only beginning to understand." "What kind of properties?" "Superconductivity at room temperature," Sullivan says. "Perfect quantum coherence. The holy grail of material science." Marcus frowns. "I'm a janitor, not a physicist." "What does that mean in English?" "It means," Harper explains, "that whoever controls this material could develop weapons systems, communications technology, and computational power beyond anything currently in existence. Quantum computers that make today's supercomputers look like abacuses, untraceable communications, guidance systems that can't be jammed. And weapons," Sullivan adds, her voice hardening. "Don't forget the weapons. The original purpose of Granite Shadow, which was what exactly?" Marcus asks. Sullivan glances at him. "A first strike capability against Cuba during the missile crisis. A weapon that could bypass Soviet defenses with perfect accuracy. A way to eliminate the Cuban missile sites before they could be activated. Without presidential authorization," Marcus says, remembering his uncle's journal. "Exactly." Sullivan grips the steering wheel tighter. "General Curtis LeMay and a group of hardliners wanted to solve the Cuban problem permanently. They didn't think Kennedy was willing to do what was necessary. They were planning a coup," Marcus says softly. The words hang in the air. "Impossible yet undeniable." "Not explicitly," Harper says. "More like presenting Kennedy with a fait accompli. Once the strike was launched, he'd have no choice but to follow through with the rest of the war plan." Marcus processes this. "And my uncle found out." Sullivan nods. "Robert Reynolds discovered the true nature of Granite Shadow on October 27, 1962, the most dangerous day of the crisis. Soviet ships were approaching the blockade line. U.S. forces were at DEFCON 2. The world was one miscalculation away from nuclear war. So what did he do? He stole the rhodium," Harper says. "Without it, the weapon system wouldn't work. It required the specific properties of rhodium 103 to function. And my father? Where does he fit in?" Sullivan takes a sharp turn onto an even smaller road, nearly invisible in the darkness. "Lieutenant James Reynolds was the weapons officer. He was responsible for the technical implementation of the Granite Shadow device. But he helped my uncle stop it," Marcus says. "Not a question, but a statement." "Yes," Sullivan confirms. "According to my father's journals, James Reynolds helped Robert secure the rhodium and the evidence. They were patriots, Mr. Reynolds. They believed in America, but not in what LeMay and his group were planning." The road narrows further, barely more than a dirt track cutting through dense forest. No streetlights, no houses, nothing but wilderness. "What happened after they stopped the weapon from being deployed?" Marcus asks. "The crisis ended peacefully the next day," Harper says. "Kennedy and Khrushchev reached an agreement. The Soviets withdrew their missiles from Cuba. We later removed ours from Turkey. The world stepped back from the brink. And no one knew how close we'd come to the edge, Sullivan adds. Not just from the Soviets, but from our own military. They covered it up, Marcus realizes. Of course they did, Harper says. Can you imagine the scandal? American generals conspiring to force the president's hand? It would have torn the country apart at the height of the Cold War. So they buried Granite Shadow, Marcus says, decommissioned the facility, offered my uncle early retirement and ownership of Sentinel Ridge. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer, Sullivan says. They wanted to know where he was, what he was doing, and they wanted to know where the rhodium was hidden, but he never told them. No, there's respect in Sullivan's voice now. Colonel Robert Reynolds kept that secret for 60 years until he died and left Sentinel Ridge to you. The farmhouse appears suddenly around a bend, a two-story structure with a wide porch, weathered clapboard siding, and a metal roof that gleams dull in the moonlight. No lights visible, no vehicles in the gravel drive. It looks abandoned, but Marcus notices the new locks on the doors, the barely visible security cameras tucked under the eaves. Sullivan parks behind the house, out of sight from the road. We should be safe here for now. Blackwood won't find this place easily. Inside, the farmhouse is surprisingly modern despite its rustic exterior. Solar-powered LED lights, satellite communications equipment, and a computer setup that would make any tech enthusiast jealous. The furnishings are sparse but functional. A dining table with 4 chairs, a worn sofa, and shelves lined with books and equipment. Government safe house? Marcus asks, setting the lockbox on the table. Personal, Sullivan corrects. My family has owned this property for generations. Off the books, no connection to me in any official records. Paranoid much? I prefer prepared, she says, echoing Harper's earlier description of Marcus's uncle. In my line of work, it pays to have places like this. And what line of work is that exactly? Marcus asks. Besides breaking into abandoned military facilities in the middle of the night. Sullivan hesitates, then reaches into her pocket and produces an ID card. Department of Defense, Special Historical Projects Division. We investigate cold cases involving national security matters. She's underselling it, Harper says, setting his canvas bag on the table next to the lockbox. Elaine leads a team that tracks down missing weapons, unaccounted for materials, forgotten contingency plans, the skeletons in America's national security closet, and Rhodium 103 is one of those skeletons? One of the biggest, Sullivan confirms. The material itself is valuable enough, worth billions on today's market. But the knowledge of what it was intended for, she shakes her head, that's priceless and dangerous. Marcus looks between them. So why are you here? What do you want with it? To secure it, Sullivan says. Make sure it doesn't fall into the wrong hands. Like Blackwood's. Exactly like Blackwood's. She moves to a cabinet, pulls out 3 glasses and a bottle of bourbon. Alexander Blackwood has spent the last 15 years building Blackwood Defense Technologies into one of the largest private military contractors in the world. They develop cutting-edge weapons systems, surveillance technology, you name it. All perfectly legal, Harper adds, accepting a glass from Sullivan. All very profitable. But Blackwood wants more. He wants what his father started. Sullivan continues, pouring a measure for Marcus. Richard Blackwood was the scientist who first theorized the unique properties of Rhodium 103. He dedicated his life to it. When the project was shut down, it broke him. Alexander grew up hearing about the miracle material that could have changed everything, Harper says. The project the government abandoned. The legacy his father never completed. So this is about revenge? Marcus asks, turning the glass in his hands but not drinking. Partly, Sullivan says, but it's also about power. With Rhodium 103, Blackwood could develop weapons and technology generations ahead of anything currently available. He could sell to the highest bidder. Foreign governments, terrorist organizations, anyone with deep enough pockets. Or keep it for himself, Harper adds grimly. Imagine a private military contractor with technology that could bypass any defense system in the world. Marcus sets down his glass. And you expect me to just hand it over to you? How do I know your intentions are any better? Sullivan meets his gaze. You don't. But I'm not asking you to hand it over. I'm asking you to help me understand what's in that lockbox, to see what your uncle and father were trying to preserve. Then we can decide what to do next. Marcus considers this, then nods toward the lockbox. Let's see what they left us. The lockbox is military grade, designed to protect its contents from almost any environmental hazard. Inside, carefully packed in foam, are 5 microfilm reels, a miniature reel-to-reel recorder, and a small notebook with a faded leather cover. Harper examines the microfilm reels. These appear to be technical specifications, weapon designs, deployment scenarios, target packages. Sullivan finds a viewer in her equipment and threads the first reel. Images appear on a small screen. Schematics, equations, test results. She whistles softly. This is the complete Granite Shadow technical package. The science behind Rhodium 103, the weapon system, everything. Marcus picks up the notebook, opening it carefully. His father's name is written on the first page in the same handwriting he remembers from birthday cards and notes left on the refrigerator. The entries are technical at first. Test results, calculations, observations about material properties. Then dated October 26, 1962. Bob showed me the Ascension protocol today. Can't believe what I'm seeing. This isn't defense. This is a straight first strike capability bypassing normal command channels. Curtis is pushing to activate without presidential authorization. Says Kennedy doesn't have the stomach to do what's necessary. This isn't what I signed up for. October 27th. Made decision. Cannot be part of this. Told Bob I'm with him. We're securing the R-103 tonight. We'll hide it where no one can find it. If this goes wrong, Marie needs to know I did it for her and the baby. The baby, Marcus. His father had done this for his mother and their unborn child. A final entry, undated. If you're reading this, something has happened to Bob and me. The material is secure. The evidence is here. Trust no one, especially not Blackwood. The key is in the family. Marcus looks up. What does that mean? The key is in the family. Sullivan shakes her head. I don't know. Maybe a code of some kind. The miniature recorder sits on the table, still unopened. Marcus picks it up, examining it. A standard government-issue microcassette recorder from the early 1960s, designed for field agents to document observations. He presses the play button, but nothing happens. Batteries, Harper says. After all these years, they'd be long dead. Sullivan rummages through a drawer and produces a small battery adapter. Try this. It's adjustable for various vintage equipment. Marcus connects it, and the recorder's small reel begins to turn. A voice emerges from the tiny speaker. Clear, authoritative, unmistakably military. October 27, 1962. General Curtis LeMay speaking. Ascension Protocol is hereby activated. Sentinel Ridge acknowledge receipt and prepare for targeting package transmission. Another voice responds. Marcus recognizes his uncle's formal tone from childhood visits. Sentinel Ridge acknowledges. Authorization code required, sir. Authorization Lima Echo Mike Alpha Yankee override. Washington Control. This comes directly from SAC. A pause. Sir, that's not standard protocol. The president doesn't have the spine to do what's necessary, Reynolds. You've seen the intel. Those missiles in Cuba could be operational within 24 hours. We're out of time. With respect, sir, Granite Shadow deployment requires presidential authorization. Those requirements have been waived under emergency protocols. Do you understand me, Captain Reynolds? This is a direct order. Another pause, longer this time. Understood, sir. Preparing for targeting package transmission. The recording ends. Sullivan and Harper exchange glances. He was buying time, Sullivan says quietly. Your uncle. He knew what they were planning. And my father helped him stop it, Marcus adds, feeling a strange pride in a man he barely remembers. There's more, Harper says, checking the tape. Another recording on the B-side. Marcus flips the cassette and presses play again. A new voice, younger with the same inflections Marcus hears in his own speech. His father. This is Lieutenant James Reynolds, weapons officer, Sentinel Ridge Facility, recording this as evidence of actions taken on October 27, 1962. Captain Robert Reynolds and I have secured the Rhodium 103 material required for Granite Shadow deployment. We are placing it in secure storage, along with this testimony and supporting documentation. A rustling sound, papers being moved. We believe General Curtis LeMay and possibly others in Strategic Air Command attempting to force a first strike against Cuba without presidential authorization. The Ascension Protocol they have activated bypasses normal command and control channels. We cannot in good conscience participate in what amounts to a military coup against civilian leadership. Another voice in the background, his uncle. Add that we're loyal officers acting to protect the Constitution and civilian control of the military. Yes, that's important. His father's voice again. We want to be clear that our actions, while technically in violation of direct orders, are taken in defense of our oath to the Constitution. We believe the Ascension Protocol itself is illegal and represents a grave threat to American democracy. A deep breath. If anything happens to us, this evidence should be delivered to the President of the United States directly, not through military channels. The conspiracy may extend further than we currently know. The recording ends. The room is silent except for the soft whir of the empty tape continuing to spin. Jesus, Harper whispers. They weren't just stopping a weapon, Sullivan says. They were preventing a coup. Marcus stares at the recorder, hearing his father's voice for the first time in over 30 years. The voice of a man who risked everything to do what was right. And they kept this secret all these years, he says, even from their families. They had to, Sullivan replies. The men behind Ascension were powerful, connected. If this had gotten out at the wrong time... My father died when I was 10, Marcus says. Factory accident. At least that's what we were told. Sullivan and Harper exchange another look. What? Marcus demands. What aren't you telling me? Sullivan hesitates, then speaks carefully. According to my father's journals, James Reynolds' death wasn't an accident. He was killed to keep him quiet. They would have gone after your uncle too, but he had taken precautions. Dead man switches, evidence in multiple locations. They decided it was safer to watch him than eliminate him. The room spins around Marcus. His father murdered. The accident at the steel mill that his mother never fully explained. That left her a widow raising a young boy alone. Who, he asks, his voice a whisper. Who killed him? We don't know for certain, Sullivan says. My father suspected it was Richard Blackwood. He had the most to lose if the truth about Granite Shadow came out. His reputation, his career, everything. Alexander Blackwood's father. Yes. Marcus stands abruptly, needing to move, to process this. He paces the small room, pieces falling into place. So that's why my uncle left me Sentinel Ridge. He knew they were watching him, knew he couldn't expose the truth himself. He was passing the responsibility to me. It appears so, Harper agrees. The question is, what do we do with it now? The people directly involved in the Ascension Protocol are mostly dead. LeMay, your uncle, your father, Richard Blackwood, my father. But Alexander Blackwood is very much alive, and he wants the Rodeum for his own purposes, Sullivan points out. Marcus stops pacing. We need to expose it. All of it. The coup attempt, the Rodeum, everything. It's not that simple, Harper cautions. This is still classified material. Revealing it without authorization would be a federal crime. My father and uncle committed treason to protect the Constitution, Marcus says. I think I can risk a federal charge. There are proper channels, Sullivan argues, ways to declassify historical material like this. My division could... A sharp crack interrupts her. The distinctive sound of a high-powered rifle shot. The window behind Harper explodes inward, showering him with glass as he dives to the floor. Get down, Sullivan yells, already in motion, pulling Marcus behind the solid kitchen counter as more shots ring out. How did they find us? Marcus shouts over the gunfire. Sullivan is checking her pistol, a compact 9mm that appeared in her hand as if by magic. I don't know. This place isn't in any database. Harper crawls toward them, leaving a smear of blood on the floor. The Rodeum, he gasps. It emits a unique radiation signature. If Blackwood has the right equipment, he could track it. Sullivan curses. The front door crashes open. Men in tactical gear pour in, weapons raised. Department of Defense, hands where we can see them. Sullivan rises slowly, her pistol pointed downward but not dropped. Special Agent Elaine Sullivan, DoD Historical Projects. Stand down. The lead agent doesn't lower his weapon. We have orders to secure classified material and detain all parties. On whose authority? Sullivan demands. National Security Directive 247, signed by the Secretary of Defense this evening. Sullivan's expression hardens. Blackwood. He got to the secretary. Place your weapon on the ground and step back, the agent orders. Sullivan hesitates, calculating odds, possibilities. Don't, Marcus says quietly. There are too many of them. She sets her pistol down carefully. This is a mistake. We're on the same side. That's for others to determine, ma'am. The agent nods to his team. Secure the material and the suspects. As they're being zip-tied, the crowd of agents parts to admit a new figure. A tall man in an expensive suit, silver-haired with a face that might have been handsome before ambition hardened it into something predatory. He surveys the room with cold calculation, his gaze finally settling on Marcus. Mr. Reynolds, he says, his voice smooth as polished marble. I'm Alexander Blackwood. I believe you have something that belongs to my family. It doesn't belong to anyone, Marcus replies, especially not you. Blackwood smiles without warmth. Such conviction. You remind me of your uncle. He was equally stubborn about things he didn't understand. He moves to the table, examining the lockbox, the microfilm, the recorder. Ah, the famous evidence. I've been looking for this for a very long time. You won't get away with this, Sullivan says. Your team has been reassigned, Blackwood cuts her off. National security matter, very urgent. They're currently searching for nuclear material in Montana. Wild goose chase, I'm afraid, but it will keep them busy for several days. He picks up one of the rhodium cylinders, holding it to the light. Remarkable. After all these years, perfectly preserved. My father would have been amazed. Your father was part of a coup attempt, Marcus says. He tried to overthrow civilian control of the military, and when my father helped stop it, your father had him killed. Blackwood's expression doesn't change, but something flickers in his eyes. History is written by the survivors, Mr. Reynolds. My father saw a Soviet threat 90 miles from American shores. He developed a solution. Weak men stopped him from implementing it, and we spent the next 30 years locked in a Cold War that could have been avoided. You're insane, Sullivan says flatly. I'm practical, Blackwood corrects, just like my father. Just like the men who understood what needed to be done in 1962. He turns to the lead agent. Secure all of this material, follow the containment protocols for the rhodium, and bring these three to the secondary site. What about the farmhouse, sir? Blackwood glances around. Unfortunate gas leak. Terrible tragedy. Make sure nothing survives. As they're led outside, Marcus sees men placing small devices throughout the house. Incendiary charges designed to destroy everything and make it look like an accident. You won't get away with this, Sullivan says again, struggling against the zip ties. I already have, Blackwood replies smoothly. I have the materials, I have the evidence, and soon I'll have you somewhere very quiet where we can discuss exactly what you know and who you've told. They're loaded into separate black SUVs. As Marcus's vehicle pulls away, he looks back at the farmhouse, the last place he heard his father's voice. Soon it will be ash, another piece of history erased. In the distance, thunder rumbles, a spring storm approaching from the west. Or perhaps it's the sound of the past catching up to the present, of secrets too long buried finally breaking free. The SUV turns onto the main road, accelerating into the darkness. Beside Marcus, a guard watches him passively, weapon ready. Ahead, another vehicle carries Sullivan. Behind, a third holds Harper. Marcus tests his restraints. Tight, professional, no give. The training they give janitors doesn't cover escaping from military-grade zip ties or overpowering armed guards. But as the SUV rounds a curve, something shifts in his pocket. His uncle's journal, forgotten in the chaos, pressing against his ribs. The key is in the family, his father had written. Whatever that means, Marcus still has a piece of the puzzle, and as long as he has that, there's hope. The convoy disappears into the night, heading toward a confrontation 60 years in the making. Behind them, the first flames begin to lick at the farmhouse walls. The secondary site turns out to be an underground bunker, buried beneath what appears to be an ordinary office building on the outskirts of Washington, D.C. The 3-hour drive passes in tense silence. The guard beside Marcus never speaking, never taking his eyes off his prisoner. The SUV convoy descends into a subterranean parking garage where men in black tactical gear escort Marcus, Sullivan, and Harper into a freight elevator. No logos, no identifying marks, nothing to indicate which agency, if any, is running this operation. The elevator descends for what feels like minutes. 5 floors, 10 more. When the doors finally open, they reveal a sterile hallway of polished concrete and recessed lighting. The air smells faintly of ozone and industrial cleaner. They're separated, led to different interrogation rooms. Marcus's is small, windowless, with a metal table bolted to the floor and 2 chairs facing each other. A camera watches from the corner, its red light a steady, unblinking eye. The guard removes the zip ties, instructs Marcus to sit, and leaves. The door locks with a heavy thunk. Marcus rubs his wrists, looks around. Nothing in the room offers an escape route or a weapon. Just white walls, hard furniture, and the camera. Time passes. An hour, maybe more. No clock to tell. Just the hum of ventilation and the occasional distant sound of a door opening and closing. Finally, the door swings open. Alexander Blackwood enters carrying a manila folder. He sets it on the table, takes the seat opposite Marcus. "Mr. Reynolds," he says, as if they're meeting for a business lunch. "I hope they've treated you well." Marcus says nothing, takes another mental inventory of the room. Still no way out. "I understand your confusion," Blackwood continues. "Your uncle was a secretive man. He didn't tell you what you were inheriting or why. Let me fill in some gaps." He opens the folder, slides a document across the table. A declassified report from 1962, heavily redacted but with enough visible text to make out the essentials. A Soviet plan to arm their missiles in Cuba with an experimental warhead design that could penetrate American defenses. "What the history books don't tell you," Blackwood says, "is how close we came to annihilation. The Soviets weren't just placing conventional missiles in Cuba. They were developing a first strike capability that could have reached Washington in less than 15 minutes. He slides another document across. "My father discovered this. He developed rhodium-103 as our counter, a material that could shield our own weapons and delivery systems from Soviet detection. The perfect defense and, if necessary, the perfect offense. That's not what the evidence shows," Marcus says, finding his voice. "Granite Shadow wasn't about defense. It was about bypassing the president's authority, launching an unauthorized first strike." Blackwood's smile is thin, a matter of perspective. "General LeMay and my father saw a window of opportunity closing. Kennedy was hesitating. Every day of delay increased the risk that those Soviet missiles would become operational. So they decided to commit treason. They decided to save their country." Blackwood leans forward. "Do you know what would have happened if the Soviets had launched first? Millions dead in the initial strike. Tens of millions more in the counterstrike. The end of the United States as we know it." Kennedy and Khrushchev found a peaceful solution, Marcus counters, without launching a single missile. They got lucky. And do you know why? Blackwood taps the document. "Because the Soviets believed we had superior technology. They thought we could detect and neutralize their missiles. The mere possibility of rhodium-103 was enough to make them back down." He pulls another paper from the folder, a technical schematic showing the molecular structure of the isotope. "This material changed history once. Imagine what it could do now with modern technology. In the hands of a private defense contractor." Marcus shakes his head. "That's not what my uncle wanted." "Your uncle was short-sighted," Blackwood says, an edge entering his voice. "He saw a weapon. I see the future. Quantum computing, impenetrable encryption, energy transmission without loss, medical applications beyond anything currently possible." He sits back, studying Marcus. "Your father and uncle stole that future from us. From everyone. And for what? To uphold some abstract principle about civilian control. To prevent a coup," Marcus says. "To stop a group of generals from starting World War III. Blackwood waves this away. Ancient history. What matters now is what we do with the rhodium. And I'm offering you a place in that future, Mr. Reynolds. Blackwood Defense Technologies could use someone with your unique connection to this material. The containment system your uncle built recognizes your DNA. There may be other safeguards we haven't discovered yet. Work with us. Help us understand what we have. Share in the rewards." Marcus stares at him. "You think I'd help you after learning you had my father killed?" Blackwood's expression doesn't change. "I had nothing to do with your father's death. I was a child when it happened. But your father did. My father protected his life's work, Blackwood says coldly, just as I'm protecting mine. He slides a final document across the table, a non-disclosure agreement with Blackwood Defense Technologies letterhead. Sign this. Agree to work with us or face federal charges for theft of classified material, espionage, and obstruction of justice. And if I refuse, then you'll disappear into a hole so deep even I won't be able to find you. Blackwood stands. Think about it. I'll be back in an hour. He leaves, the door locking behind him. Marcus picks up the NDA, skims the dense legal language. Lifetime secrecy. Complete surrender of all rights to the Rhodeum and associated technology. A consulting position with Blackwood Defense that amounts to house arrest at a company facility. He sets the paper down, looks up at the camera. Somewhere someone is watching. Maybe Sullivan and Harper are in rooms just like this one, facing the same choice. His hand goes to his pocket, feeling the outline of his uncle's journal. The key is in the family. What had his father meant? Marcus pulls out the journal, flips through the pages he's already read. Nothing that seems like a key or a code. He examines the binding, the cover, looking for hidden compartments or messages. Then he notices something. The inside back cover is slightly thicker than it should be. He runs his fingers along the edge, feels a seam. Carefully, he works a fingernail into it, peeling back the leather to reveal a hidden pocket. Inside is a small metal key, old-fashioned, similar to the one that opens Sentinel Ridge's gate. Attached to it is a tag with a sequence of numbers, 38.8977D or N, 77.0365W, coordinates. But to what? And how would this help him now locked in an underground bunker with armed guards outside? The door opens again. Not Blackwood this time, but a technician in a lab coat. He carries a small device that looks like a medical scanner. Mr. Reynolds, he says, professional but not friendly. I need to take a blood sample to analyze your DNA markers. The containment system at Sentinel Ridge recognized you. We need to understand how. Marcus hesitates, stalls. Where are Dr. Sullivan and Dr. Harper? Being processed, the technician says vaguely. Your arm, please. Marcus slowly extends his arm. As the technician leans in with the device, Marcus notices something on his ID badge, partially obscured by his lab coat but visible for a moment as he moves. A logo, not Blackwood Defense Technologies, but a stylized eagle clutching arrows in an olive branch. The Department of Defense. The technician, catching Marcus looking, meets his eyes briefly. A tiny nod, almost imperceptible. This won't hurt, he says, pressing the device against Marcus's forearm. It beeps, drawing a small sample of blood. I'll need to run this through our system. Someone will be back for you shortly. He leaves, but not before dropping something from his sleeve. A small slip of paper that falls to the floor beside Marcus's chair. Marcus waits until the door closes, then reaches down. The note is handwritten, the letters tiny and precise. Sullivan team en route, 20 mailroom, be ready. Hope surges in Marcus's chest. Sullivan's people found them. But how? And what does be ready mean? He looks at the key again, at the coordinates. Something about them seems familiar. He's seen them before somewhere. Then it hits him. Not the exact numbers, but the location they represent. Downtown Washington, D.C., near the National Mall. But what's there that would matter to his father and uncle? The White House? No, that's not right. The Pentagon? Possible, but unlikely. The Smithsonian? The Washington Monument? None of them feel right. What else is in that area that would matter to military men concerned with constitutional authority and civilian control? The National Archives, where the Constitution is kept, where the evidence of Granite Shadow and Ascension would have the most impact, preserved for history, impossible to suppress or destroy. The key is in the family. Not his biological family, but the American family. The founding documents that his father and uncle risked everything to protect. A distant boom shakes dust from the ceiling. Then another. Alarms begin to wail. Marcus pockets the key and the journal. Whatever's happening, he needs to be ready to move. The door flies open. The technician is back, but now he's armed, wearing tactical gear over his lab coat. Reynolds with me now. Who are you? Colonel Frank Matthews, Special Activities Division. I work with Sullivan. He tosses Marcus a vest. Put this on. We're Oscar Mike in 30 seconds. Marcus dons the vest, follows Matthews into the corridor. It's chaos. Emergency lights flashing, sprinklers activated, armed personnel running in all directions. What's happening? Extraction, Matthews says, checking corners before advancing. Sullivan's team created a diversion 2 levels up. We're getting you, Harper, and Sullivan out before Blackwood realizes what's happening. They round a corner, find Sullivan and 2 operators escorting a limping Harper. His leg is bandaged, face pale. Marcus, Sullivan says, relief in her voice. Thank God. Frank, did you tell him? No time, Matthews replies. We need to move. Elevator shaft is compromised. Taking the emergency stairs. They hurry down the corridor, Matthews in the lead, another operator bringing up the rear. The sounds of gunfire echo from somewhere above. What's happening? Marcus asks Sullivan as they run. My team tracked us through an emergency beacon in my watch, she explains. When they realized we'd been taken by a domestic group operating outside official channels, they initiated a recovery operation. You mean a raid? Technically, this facility doesn't exist, Sullivan says. So, technically, this isn't a raid. They reach a heavy metal door marked emergency exit. Matthew swipes a key card, pushes it open to reveal a concrete stairwell. 16 floors up, he says. Pace yourselves. As they climb, Sullivan continues. Blackwood has connections in the Pentagon, but he overplayed his hand. The Secretary of Defense never signed any directive authorizing this operation. When my team presented evidence that he was holding federal agents against their will, they sent in the cavalry, Harper finishes, grimacing with each step. Shouldn't we be going down? Marcus asks. Not up. Tunnel network, Matthews explains from the front. This facility connects to 3 other buildings. We're heading for the northeast exit, farthest from where Blackwood will expect us to go. Floor after floor they climb. Marcus's legs burn, his lungs protest. But with each step, they're closer to freedom, closer to exposing the truth. They reach a landing marked B2. Almost there. The door above them bursts open. Men in black tactical gear pour in, weapons raised. Down, Matthews shouts, shoving Marcus against the wall as gunfire erupts. The stairwell becomes a battlefield of muzzle flashes, illuminating concrete in strobe-like bursts. Matthews and his team return fire, covering Sullivan as she pulls Harper and Marcus back down the stairs. Plan B, she yells to Matthews over the din. Southwest corridor. Matthews nods, tossing a smoke grenade up the stairwell. Under its cover, they retreat, doubling back through a maintenance door on B4. This level is different. Older, with pipes running along the ceiling and grated metal flooring. They move quickly through the industrial space, Matthews navigating with the confidence of someone who's studied the blueprints. Utility tunnel, he explains. Cold War era. Connects to the metro maintenance system. Behind them, boots on metal. Blackwood's men in pursuit. Go, Matthews orders, turning to face the threat. I'll hold them here. Sullivan hesitates. That's an order, Agent, Matthews says firmly. Get them out. Get the evidence out. Sullivan nods once, then leads Marcus and Harper forward. The sounds of gunfire erupt behind them as Matthews engages the pursuers. The tunnel seems endless, twisting and branching. Sullivan navigates without hesitation, checking her watch occasionally for what must be directions. Finally, they reach a vertical shaft with metal rungs embedded in the wall above a circular hatch. Service entrance to the metro tunnels, Sullivan says. Harper, can you climb? Harper nods grimly. Just get me to the top. One by one they ascend. Sullivan goes first, then helps Harper through the hatch. Marcus follows, the journal and keys secure in his pocket. The metro tunnel is dark, lit only by emergency lights spaced along the walls. The third rail hums with electricity. This way, Sullivan says, leading them along the maintenance walkway. There's an emergency exit half a mile ahead. They move as quickly as Harper's injury allows, the distant sounds of pursuit fading behind them. The tunnel air is stale, heavy with the scent of ozone and dust. Did you know, Marcus asks Sullivan as they walk, about my father? She glances at him. Not until recently. My father left journals too. Not as detailed as your uncle's, but enough to piece together what happened. When I learned that Colonel Reynolds had died and left Sentinel Ridge to his nephew, I knew we had to move before Blackwood did. But we were too late, Harper says from behind them. Not too late, Marcus corrects. We got the evidence out. We know the truth. He tells them about the key, the coordinates, his theory about the National Archives. Your father was cleverer than anyone gave him credit for, Sullivan says admiringly. The archives would be the perfect place to hide a backup, somewhere even Blackwood couldn't reach it. But will anyone believe us? Harper asks. After all these years, the recordings and microfilm will help, Sullivan says. And I have contacts at the Washington Post and New York Times. Once this story breaks, Blackwood won't be able to suppress it. What about the rhodium, Marcus asks. Blackwood has it now. Not all of it, Sullivan pats her pocket. I secured a sample before they raided the farmhouse. Enough for analysis, enough to prove what it is. They reach the emergency exit, a metal door leading to a service stairwell. Sullivan punches a code into the keypad, and the lock disengages. We'll surface 6 blocks from the archives, she says. I have a team meeting us there. As they climb the stairs toward the street, toward the light, Marcus feels a weight lifting. For decades, his father and uncle carried the burden of a terrible secret, protecting the nation from threats both foreign and domestic. Now it's his turn to finish what they started. The key is in the family, and soon the truth will be too. The service door opens to a narrow alley behind a row of government office buildings. The pre-dawn air is cool, the streets of Washington, D.C. unusually quiet. Marcus, Sullivan, and the injured Harper emerge from the darkness like ghosts from another era, blinking in the ambient light of the capital city. Sullivan checks her watch. 0427 hours. Archives doesn't open until 1000. We can't wait that long, Harper says, leaning against a brick wall, his makeshift bandage now soaked through. Blackwood's people will regroup, call in reinforcements. I know someone, Sullivan says, already typing on her phone. Security chief at the archives, Vietnam vet. Old school, believes in chain of command, but also knows when the system fails. Marcus paces the alley. The key from his uncle's journal is heavy in his pocket. So close now. After 60 years, the truth about Granite Shadow in the Ascension Protocol is hours away from being secured where it belongs, in the nation's historical record. Impossible to erase. Sullivan's phone buzzes. She reads the message, nods. 15 minutes, southeast entrance. My contact will meet us. They move cautiously through the empty streets, keeping to shadows, avoiding the ever-present security cameras of modern Washington. Harper's limp grows more pronounced with each block. Marcus offers his shoulder for support, taking the older man's weight. Sorry about this, Harper wheezes. Not as young as I used to be. You're doing fine, Marcus assures him. Better than I would in your place. The National Archives building looms ahead, neoclassical and imposing with its row of Corinthian columns and the words Archives of the United States carved in stone. The repository of America's founding documents, the physical home of the Constitution and Declaration of Independence. And, if Marcus's theory is correct, the hiding place of his father's final insurance policy. A figure emerges from a side entrance, elderly but straight-backed, military-bearing, evident even in civilian clothes. This must be Sullivan's contact. Agent Sullivan, the man says quietly as they approach. His weathered face shows no reaction to their disheveled appearance or Harper's obvious injury. Been a while. Chief Williams, Sullivan replies. Thank you for this. You said it was about the Constitution. His eyes shift to Marcus and Harper. These men with you? Carter Harper, historical analyst, Sullivan indicates. And this is Marcus Reynolds. His father and uncle served during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Williams's eyes narrow slightly at the name. Any relation to Colonel Robert Reynolds, Strategic Air Command? My uncle, Marcus confirms. A flash of recognition crosses Williams' face. I served under him briefly. Good man. Principled. He studies Marcus more carefully. You look like your father. Marcus's breath catches. You knew my father too? Lieutenant James Reynolds, weapons specialist. Quick mind, spoke his mind, sometimes to his detriment. Williams looks at his watch. We should move inside. Security sweep in 20 minutes. He leads them through the employee entrance, using his key card and a numeric code. The interior is dimly lit by emergency lighting, the grand rotunda ahead of them visible only in outline. Where to? Williams asks. Marcus pulls out the key and the coordinates. My father left these. 38.8977 degree N, 77.0365 degrees W. Williams takes the paper and studies it. That's inside the building, all right, but not the main exhibition area. He thinks for a moment. Research rooms, second floor. They follow him through the silent building, footsteps echoing on marble floors. Harper's labored breathing is the only other sound. At a bank of elevators, Williams uses his key card again, then leads them to the second floor. The research area is extensive. Rows of tables, computer terminals, and microfilm readers, all dark and silent now. Williams navigates confidently, counting rows, checking landmarks. Should be right about here, he says, stopping at a section of the wall that looks no different from any other. But his trained eye catches something, a small metal plate at baseboard level, nearly invisible unless you're looking for it. Marcus kneels, examines the plate. There's a keyhole, old-fashioned, like the key in his pocket. He inserts it, turns. A soft click, and a panel in the wall slides open just enough to reveal a small safe deposit box. Williams gives a low whistle. Cold War-era dead drop. I haven't seen one of these in decades. Your father had high-level access. More likely he had friends in low places, Sullivan comments. Maintenance staff, security personnel, the invisible workforce that keeps places like this running. Like father, like son, Harper adds with a meaningful glance at Marcus's janitor uniform. Marcus removes the box, sets it on a nearby table. It's locked, but the same key works here too. Inside is a sealed metal canister, the kind used for preserving documents long-term. Sullivan produces a pair of archival gloves from her pocket. Clearly, she came prepared. Marcus puts them on, carefully opens the canister. Inside is a stack of microfilm reels, photographs, and a sealed letter addressed simply to the President of the United States. The backup, Harper whispers. Your father and uncle created redundancies, multiple insurance policies. Sullivan agrees, examining the microfilm reels. These match what we found at Sentinel Ridge. Williams leans in. What exactly did your father and uncle do, son? Marcus meets his gaze. They stopped a coup. October 27, 1962. General Curtis LeMay and a group of hardliners tried to force a first strike against Cuba without presidential authorization. My father and uncle sabotaged their plans. Williams's expression doesn't change, but something in his eyes shifts. Recognition, perhaps, or the confirmation of an old suspicion. There were rumors, he says quietly, among those of us who served in SAC during that period, whispers about an operation that went dark suddenly. Codenamed Granite Shadow. You knew about it? Sullivan asked sharply. Williams shakes his head. Not details, just that something big was being developed. Then suddenly it was gone. All records purged, personnel reassigned, the kind of cleanup that only happens when something goes very wrong or very right. He looks at the canister with new respect. LeMay was a hard man, brilliant strategist, but saw everything in black and white. During the missile crisis, he pushed Kennedy hard for airstrikes, invasion of Cuba. When Kennedy hesitated, LeMay decided to force his hand, Sullivan finishes. It fits his profile, Williams acknowledges. He believed absolutely in American military superiority and the necessity of confronting the Soviet threat directly. Marcus unseals the letter, unfolds the brittle paper carefully. The handwriting matches his father's journal, precise and methodical. To the President of the United States, he reads aloud, if you are reading this, then the Ascension Protocol and Project Granite Shadow have finally come to light. What follows is a full accounting of events that took place between October 24-27, 1962, during the height of the Cuban Missile Crisis. The letter continues, detailing the development of Radium-103, the creation of a first-strike weapon system designed to bypass normal command channels, and the plan by General LeMay and several other high-ranking officers to activate it without Kennedy's knowledge or approval. We acted to preserve civilian control of the military and uphold our oath to the Constitution, the letter concludes. We committed technical treason to prevent a greater treason. If there is to be judgment, let history be our judge. It's signed by both James and Robert Reynolds. The room is silent when Marcus finishes reading. Even William seems shaken. All these years, Harper murmurs. They kept this secret for all these years. They had to, Sullivan says. Exposing it during the Cold War could have torn the country apart, weakened us at a critical time. But they made sure the truth would come out eventually, Marcus adds, looking at the cache of evidence. They just needed the right moment. Williams checks his watch. Security sweep in 2 minutes. We need to move. Where, Marcus asks? We can't just walk out of here with this material. I have a secure room, Williams says, used for processing classified historical documents before declassification. We can hold there until the archives director arrives. This needs to go through proper channels. They repack the evidence, close the wall panel, and follow Williams through a maze of corridors to a windowless room with a heavy steel door. Inside are workstations, computers, and document preservation equipment. Williams locks them in, then makes a call, brief and cryptic, but clearly to the archives director. He'll be here in 30 minutes, Williams reports. I told him it involves national security and constitutional issues. That got his attention. Harper sinks gratefully into a chair, his face pale. Sullivan examines his wound, applies a fresh bandage from a first aid kit on the wall. What happens now? Marcus asks, setting the evidence box on a table. Due process, Sullivan says. The archives director will authenticate the materials. My team will verify your father's and uncle's identities and roles. Once the provenance is established, the documents will be properly preserved and eventually declassified. And Blackwood? Sullivan's expression darkens. My team will handle Blackwood. What he did, kidnapping federal agents, operating an unauthorized detention facility, those are serious crimes. Even with his connections, he can't escape that. What about the rhodium? Harper asks. He still has most of it. Not for long, Sullivan assures him. Based on what we found at the farmhouse, we have enough evidence to secure a warrant for Blackwood Defense Technologies. Every ounce of that material will be recovered. Marcus isn't convinced. Blackwood's powerful, connected. He'll fight back. Let him, Sullivan says grimly. Some fights are worth having. Williams returns from checking the corridor. Director's on his way. Building security has been alerted to watch for any unusual activity. He looks at Marcus. Your father and uncle were brave men. What they did, it couldn't have been easy. No, Marcus agrees. It wasn't. He thinks of his father's journal, the difficult choice he made, knowing it might cost him everything. And ultimately, it did. A soft knock on the door. Williams checks the peephole, then unlocks it. A distinguished older man enters, gray-haired, wearing a hastily donned suit, his tie slightly askew. The archives director. His eyes sweep the room, taking in the injured Harper, the disheveled Sullivan, and Marcus, still in his janitor's uniform, now torn and dirty from their escape. Chief Williams, he says, this had better be as important as you suggested. Williams gestures to the evidence box. Sir, these people have uncovered documents related to a critical national security incident during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Material that's been hidden here in our building for over 60 years. The director's eyebrows rise. He approaches the table, examines the canister, the microfilm, the letter. Where did this come from? Sullivan steps forward, shows her credentials. Dr. Elaine Sullivan, Department of Defense Historical Projects Division. This material was preserved by 2 military officers who prevented an unauthorized nuclear strike during the missile crisis. Unauthorized? The director's attention sharpens. By whom? General Curtis LeMay and several other Air Force commanders, Sullivan explains. They developed a weapon system designed to bypass presidential authority. These men stopped it. The director picks up James Reynolds' letter, reads it silently. His expression grows increasingly grave. This is extraordinary, he says finally. If authenticated, this would significantly alter our understanding of that period. He looks at Marcus. And you are? Marcus Reynolds. James Reynolds was my father. Robert Reynolds was my uncle. A janitor from Pennsylvania, Williams adds, who inherited more than he bargained for. The director considers this, then nods decisively. We'll need to assemble a special team. Historians, archivists, national security experts. This material must be handled with the utmost care. He turns to Sullivan. Your department will need to be involved, of course. Already on it, sir, Sullivan confirms. My team is securing related evidence from other locations as we speak. A commotion outside, raised voices, footsteps. Williams moves to the door, hand going to where a weapon would be if he were still in uniform. The door bursts open. Men in suits enter, flanking a stern-faced woman in her 50s who carries herself with unmistakable authority. Director Hayes, she addresses the archives director. I'm Ellen Frell, Deputy Director of National Intelligence. This facility is now under the jurisdiction of the Office of the DNI. Sullivan steps forward. On what authority? Frell produces a document. Executive order that's signed 30 minutes ago. National security concerns related to classified Cold War materials. Her gaze sweeps the room, settles on the evidence box. Is that it? The archives director stands his ground. Deputy Director, this material was deposited legally in the National Archives. It falls under our preservation mandate. That material contains information that could damage national security and bilateral relations with current allies. Frell counters. It requires special handling. Marcus watches the exchange with growing alarm. This is exactly what his father and uncle feared. The system closing ranks, protecting itself, burying the truth. Sullivan's phone buzzes. She checks it, her face paling slightly. What is it? Marcus asks quietly. Blackwood, she murmurs. He's activated his connections. This goes higher than I thought. One of Frell's aides whispers something in her ear. She nods, then addresses the room. We've received information that foreign intelligence agencies may be targeting this material. The security of the archives is potentially compromised. That's convenient, Sullivan says, not bothering to hide her skepticism. Just as we uncover evidence of a historical attempted coup, suddenly there's a security threat. I don't make the threats, Mr. Sullivan. I respond to them, Frell replies coolly, and right now protocol dictates securing this material at our facility. The realization hits Marcus like a physical blow. After everything, the escape, the evidence, the vindication so close at hand, they might still lose. The truth might still be buried. Unless the key is in the family. His father's words echo in his mind, not just about the physical key that opened the wall safe, but something deeper. The American family, the shared heritage that binds all citizens. Marcus steps forward, addressing Frell directly. Deputy Director, with respect, this evidence doesn't just belong to the government. It belongs to history, to the American people. Frell's expression is unmoved. Mr. Reynolds, I understand you feel a personal connection to this material, but national security considerations take precedence. Not when the national security consideration is covering up an attempted coup against a sitting president, Marcus says, his voice stronger now. Not when it's hiding the fact that military commanders tried to usurp civilian authority and launch an unauthorized nuclear strike. The room goes still. Even Frell's impassive facade cracks slightly. That's a serious accusation, she says carefully. It's all documented right there, Marcus points to the evidence. My father and uncle risked everything, their careers, their freedom, and eventually my father's life, to stop it. They preserved the evidence here in the archives because they believed that someday the truth should be known, that the American people deserve to know how close we came to disaster and who saved us from it. Sullivan steps up beside him. Deputy Director, my team has already secured additional evidence from Sentinel Ridge facility. Recordings of General LeMay ordering the Ascension Protocol activated without presidential authorization. Technical documents on Project Granite Shadow. This isn't going away. One of Frell's aides whispers something in her ear. Her expression tightens. The Washington Post received an anonymous package 20 minutes ago, Sullivan continues. Contents unknown, but I suspect it contains copies of what we found. A bluff perhaps, but a good one. Marcus watches Frell calculate her options, weighing damage control against total suppression. The political reality is shifting before their eyes. Too many people know now. Too many copies of the evidence exist. These materials would require extensive review before any public disclosure, Frell says finally. Decades-old events taken out of context could be dangerously misinterpreted. Then provide the context, Marcus counters. Declassify the surrounding materials. Let historians do their work. But don't bury this again. The archives director clears his throat. I would remind everyone that under the Presidential Records Act and the Federal Records Act, these materials fall squarely within the archives' mandate to preserve and eventually make accessible. Frell's phone rings. She steps aside to answer, speaks in low tones for several minutes. When she returns, her demeanor has subtly shifted. The Director of National Intelligence has conferred with the White House, she announces. In light of the historical significance of these materials, a joint review board will be established. Representatives from the archives, the Pentagon Historical Division, and the intelligence community will evaluate the documents for declassification under an accelerated timeline. Not a complete victory, but not a defeat either. A compromise that acknowledges the truth can't be simply disappeared. And Alexander Blackwood, Sullivan asks, is cooperating with federal authorities, Frell says, with just the slightest emphasis on cooperating that suggests Blackwood's cooperation might not be entirely voluntary. The tension in the room eases slightly. Williams gives Marcus an approving nod. Harper manages a pained smile. The archives director takes charge, directing his staff to properly secure and document the evidence. Frell's team establishes a perimeter, their focus shifting from suppression to protection. Sullivan pulls Marcus aside as the professionals take over. "Well done," she says quietly. "Your father and uncle would be proud." "I didn't do anything," Marcus demurs. "I just inherited their mess." "You carried their torch," Sullivan corrects. "When it mattered most, you stood up for the truth." "That's not nothing." Medical personnel arrive to properly treat Harper's wound. As they work, he beckons Marcus over. "I've been thinking about the rhodium," he says. "The science behind it was decades ahead of its time. Your uncle must have recognized that even as he was hiding it from the world." "What do you mean?" "I mean," Harper winces as the medic cleans his wound, "that materials with those properties could revolutionize everything from computing to medicine. Used properly, under civilian oversight, it could change the world for the better." Marcus considers this. "My uncle kept it hidden for a reason, because it was developed as a weapon. In the wrong hands, at the wrong time," Harper agrees. "But times change, purposes change. You think we should develop it now, after all this?" Harper meets his gaze. "I think that's a decision for people who understand both the science and the ethics involved. People who can ensure it's used to build rather than destroy." He nods towards Sullivan, who's conferring with archive security. "People like her, and maybe people like you." "I'm just a janitor," Marcus reminds him. Harper smiles. "So was your uncle, in a way. He spent decades cleaning up other people's messes, keeping things running behind the scenes. Unappreciated, but essential." The medic helps him onto a stretcher. "Think about it. As they wheel Harper out, Sullivan returns to Marcus's side. "Transportation's arranged. We'll get you to a secure location until this settles down." Marcus looks around the room at the evidence being carefully cataloged, at the federal agents and archivists working side by side, at the machinery of government slowly grinding toward the truth rather than away from it. "What happens next?" he asks. "Debriefings, statements, paperwork." "Endless paperwork," Sullivan says with a wry smile. "The wheels of government turn slowly, but they do turn. And Sentinel Ridge, the property's still yours, technically, though given what was found there, expect some complicated legal discussions about mineral rights and national security implications." Marcus nods. He'd expected as much. The inheritance that had seemed like a joke to his neighbors in Pinterest was never really about the land or the buildings. It was about the responsibility, the torch being passed. "I've found something else," he says, pulling his uncle's journal from his pocket. "My uncle kept detailed records of everything, and not just Granite Shadow, but other projects, other secrets." Sullivan eyes the journal with professional interest. "That would be valuable to our historical archives." "I'll hand it over," Marcus agrees. "But first I want to read it all. Understand exactly what my father and uncle were involved in, what they sacrificed for." "Fair enough," Sullivan concedes. "When you're ready." Dawnlight begins to filter through the high windows of the archives building, painting the marble floors in gold and amber. A new day, the first day after a 60-year-old secret has finally begun its journey into the light. "Sir," an archivist approaches Marcus. "We found this with the other materials." He hands over a small envelope, yellowed with age, addressed simply to "my son." Marcus stares at it, his father's handwriting unmistakable. A message across time preserved for decades, waiting for this moment. With trembling fingers, he opens it. "Marcus," the letter begins, "if you're reading this, then you found what we hid. I hope you never have to, that the world never needs to know how close we came to disaster. But if that day has come, then you need to understand why we did what we did." The letter continues, personal now rather than historical. A father's words to a son he knew he might not live to see grow up. We're taught that heroism means charging into battle, facing the enemy head on. Sometimes it is, but sometimes heroism is quieter. It's standing up when everyone else sits down. It's speaking truth when lies are easier. It's doing the right thing when no one is watching. Marcus reads on, tears blurring his vision. Whatever happens to me, know this. I acted to protect you, your mother, and the country we love. Not from foreign enemies, but from the enemy within. The temptation to abandon our principles in the name of security. The Constitution doesn't defend itself. That's our job. All of us, every generation. The final paragraph catches in Marcus's throat as he reads it aloud. The key was always in the family, not just our bloodline, but the American family. The shared commitment to liberty and justice that makes us who we are. Guard it well, my son. Some duties are never forgotten. Sullivan stands respectfully silent as Marcus folds the letter, tucks it carefully into his pocket. When he looks up, his eyes are clear, his purpose set. I need to go back to Pinterest, he says. There's a school that needs its janitor. Sullivan looks surprised. After all this, you could write your own ticket. Books, interviews, consulting positions. Marcus shakes his head. That's not me, not yet anyway. He gestures at the evidence being processed around them. This story isn't about me, it's about them. What they did, what they sacrificed. I just delivered the message. Understanding dawns in Sullivan's eyes, like your uncle, working behind the scenes, keeping things running. Exactly. Marcus feels the weight of his father's letter against his heart, though I wouldn't mind consulting on the rhodium research. Making sure it's used the right way this time. I think that can be arranged, Sullivan says. The Special Historical Projects Division could use someone with your unique perspective. Halftime, Marcus stipulates. I've got floors to mop. Sullivan smiles. Deal. 3 weeks later, Marcus parks his truck in the Eagle Point High School lot at 5:45 a.m., just as he has for the past 15 years. The routine is familiar, comforting in its predictability. The weight of his key ring, the squeak of the side entrance door, the smell of industrial floor cleaner, all constants in a life that has changed dramatically. He flips on the lights, illuminating empty hallways that will soon fill with students. His footsteps echo as he makes his rounds, checking doors, windows, thermostats. In the boiler room, he adjusts a pressure valve that's been sticking, his movements precise and practiced. The old mechanical systems respond to his touch like living things. The past 3 weeks have been a whirlwind. Debriefings at the Pentagon, depositions for federal prosecutors building a case against Blackwood, meetings with historians and archivists cataloging his uncle's journal, paperwork transferring partial rights to Sentinel Ridge to a newly formed government oversight committee. Through it all, Marcus has insisted on keeping his job. His commitment has puzzled Sullivan, who calls almost daily with updates and questions. She doesn't understand why a man who helped uncover one of the most significant historical revelations in decades would choose to return to mopping floors and fixing toilets. But here in the quiet morning hours of Eagle Point High, Marcus finds a centering peace that the chaos of Washington lacked. His father's letter rests in his wallet, a constant reminder of the different forms heroism can take. The main office lights flicker on. Principal Garfield arrives early today. His reaction upon seeing Marcus a mixture of surprise and uncertainty. Reynolds, I didn't expect you back so soon. The clogged sink in the teacher's lounge won't fix itself, sir, Marcus replies, continuing to check items off his morning list. Garfield hesitates, clearly struggling with the new dynamic. 3 weeks ago, Marcus was just the invisible janitor. Now he's been on national news, referenced in congressional hearings, mentioned in the same breath as historical figures. Well, we're glad to have you back, Garfield finally says with an awkward nod. If you need anything, thank you, sir. I'll let you know. As Garfield retreats to his office, Marcus allows himself a small smile. The tentative respect is new, but he doesn't need it. The work itself has always been enough. The first bell rings at 7:30, and students begin trickling in. Their reactions are less restrained than the faculty's. Some stare openly, whispering behind their hands. Others approach with newfound courage. Mr. Reynolds, is it true you were in a shootout with government agents? A freshman asks, eyes wide with excitement. Don't believe everything you see on TV, Marcus answers, wringing out his mop. But you did find secret military stuff, right? And your dad was like, a spy? My father was a soldier who did his duty, Marcus corrects gently. Now you'd better get to class before the bell. The day progresses with similar interruptions. By lunchtime, Marcus has fielded a dozen variations of the same questions. The cafeteria falls into an unusual hush when he enters to clean up a spilled soda. No food is thrown. No one calls him Mop Bucket. Marcus finds the celebrity status more uncomfortable than the previous invisibility. He's grateful when the final bell rings and the building gradually empties. In the silence that follows, he can finally breathe easily again. He's checking the gymnasium doors when his phone vibrates. Sullivan's number. Just checking in, she says when he answers. How's civilian life treating you? Marcus secures the lock, tucks the keys into his pocket. People look at me differently. It's unsettling. Sullivan chuckles. That's what happens when you help expose a 60-year-old government conspiracy. You become interesting. I preferred being invisible. Too late for that, Reynolds. Sullivan's tone shifts, becomes more professional. Listen, the Joint Committee is meeting tomorrow to discuss the Rhodium 103 research parameters. Harper suggested you might want to be there. Marcus hesitates. That's in D.C. I've got work. I'm sure your principal would understand. This is national security, after all. Marcus thinks about it, weighing duty against duty. The research into the Rhodium is important, potentially world-changing if Harper is right about its medical applications. But so is the work here, maintaining the building where 1,000 students come to learn every day. I can drive down after my shift tomorrow, he decides. Be there by evening. Perfect. Sullivan sounds pleased. The preliminary meeting is at 8 p.m. anyway. Department heads and key stakeholders only. I'll send you the address. After they hang up, Marcus completes his closing routine. As he walks to his truck, he notices Victor Hammond Sr. leaning against the hood, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Hammond, Marcus acknowledges with a nod. Reynolds, Hammond straightens up. Heard you were back. Thought I'd come see for myself. Here I am. Marcus unlocks his truck door. Did you need something? Hammond shifts his weight, suddenly uncomfortable. Look, about that offer I made for Sentinel Ridge, I didn't know. It's fine, Marcus cuts him off. Nobody knew. That was the point. Still, Hammond persists. The way people in town talked about your uncle all these years, calling him crazy, paranoid, turns out he was right all along. Marcus studies the older man, seeing something unexpected in his face. Not quite remorse, but a reassessment. My old man served in the Air Force in the 60s, Hammond continues. SAC, just like your uncle. He used to say LeMay was a different breed. Called him Bombs Away LeMay behind his back. Said he'd nuke his own grandmother if he thought it would stop the communists. Marcus waits, sensing there's more. Anyway, Hammond concludes awkwardly. Just wanted to say, good job, what you did, standing up for the truth and all that. He extends his hand. After a moment, Marcus takes it. Thank you. Hammond nods once, then walks away. Marcus watches him go, struck by how the past can ripple forward, touching lives in unexpected ways decades later. The next evening, Marcus drives through the gates of the Naval Research Laboratory in southwest Washington, D.C. The sprawling campus sits on the banks of the Potomac River, its buildings a mix of historic brick structures and modern glass and steel facilities. Armed guards check his ID, direct him to a parking area outside a nondescript building labeled Special Projects Division. Sullivan meets him at the entrance, dressed in a formal pantsuit rather than the tactical gear he last saw her in. The change makes her look both more approachable and more authoritative. You clean up nice, Reynolds, she says, eyeing his button-down shirt and tie. No janitor uniform today? I do own other clothes, Marcus replies with a hint of a smile. They're just not as practical for unclogging toilets. She leads him through security checkpoints into an elevator that requires her badge and fingerprint to operate. They descend several floors into what must be a hardened subterranean section of the facility. The Joint Committee is just getting organized, she explains as they walk. Representatives from Defense, Energy, Intelligence, Health and Human Services, plus a civilian oversight panel. Everyone wants a piece of the Rhodium research. And Blackwood? Sullivan's expression darkens, facing multiple federal charges. His company's under interim management while the investigation continues. But he still has friends in high places trying to cut deals. They reach a conference room where about 20 people are gathered around a large table. Harper is there, his leg now in a proper cast. He rises when he sees Marcus, extending his hand. "Mr. Reynolds, glad you could make it." Other introductions follow. Department heads, scientists, military officers. Marcus recognizes a few faces from news coverage of the Granite Shadow revelations. They regard him with a mixture of curiosity and respect that makes him uncomfortable. When everyone is seated, a stern-looking woman at the head of the table calls the meeting to order. Admiral Chen, director of the Office of Naval Research, Marcus learns from Sullivan's whisper. The real power behind this project. As you all know, Admiral Chen begins, we're here to establish research parameters for Project Daybreak, the official designation for our work with Rhodium-103. Dr. Harper, would you please summarize your initial findings? Harper stands, activates a digital display that projects molecular structures above the table. Preliminary analysis confirms what the original Granite Shadow documents claimed, he says. Rhodium-103 exhibits unprecedented quantum coherence at room temperature. Its superconductive properties alone would revolutionize energy transmission, computing, and medical imaging. He gestures and the display shifts to show experimental results. The material's unique atomic structure allows for stable quantum entanglement across theoretically unlimited distances. In layman's terms, information transfer without traditional electromagnetic transmission, instantaneous communication that can't be intercepted, jammed, or detected. Of course, Harper continues, these were the properties that made it attractive for weapons applications in 1962. Guidance systems that couldn't be disrupted, communications that couldn't be intercepted. And now, Admiral Chen prompts, Harper's expression brightens. Now we see far more promising applications. Medical imaging at the molecular level, non-invasive treatments for previously inoperable conditions, quantum computing that could solve problems current systems would take centuries to process, clean energy transmission with virtually no loss over distance. A balding man in an expensive suit interrupts. "Dr. Vance, Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency," Sullivan whispers to Marcus. "That all sounds wonderful, Dr. Harper," Vance says, his tone skeptical. "But let's not pretend the defense applications aren't equally significant. Secure communications alone would transform battlefield operations. No one is denying the military potential," Dr. Kelsey from Health and Human Services counters. "But given the material's history, civilian applications should take priority." The discussion quickly devolves into crosstalk, with representatives from different agencies staking their claims. Marcus watches, increasingly uncomfortable with the bureaucratic tug-of-war. This is exactly what his father and uncle feared. Powerful interests, each wanting to control the Rhodium for their own purposes. Admiral Chen restores order with a sharp rap on the table. "This is precisely why we have civilian oversight for this project. Dr. Sullivan, could you introduce our special advisor?" Sullivan stands. "As you know, the historical context of Rhodium-103 is unique. Its development was part of a classified program that bypassed normal oversight channels with potentially catastrophic consequences. To ensure we don't repeat those mistakes, we've asked Marcus Reynolds to serve as special civilian advisor to Project Daybreak." All eyes turn to Marcus. He shifts in his seat, unprepared for the sudden attention. "Mr. Reynolds not only helped recover the material," Sullivan continues, "but as the nephew and heir of Colonel Robert Reynolds and son of Lieutenant James Reynolds, he has a unique perspective on the ethical implications of this research." Admiral Chen nods to Marcus. "Would you like to share your thoughts, Mr. Reynolds?" Marcus hesitates, looks around the table at the assembled experts, scientists, military officers, government officials. What could he, a high school janitor, possibly add to their deliberations? Then he remembers his father's letter. The Constitution doesn't defend itself. That's our job. All of us. "I'm not a scientist," Marcus begins. "I'm not a soldier or a politician. Until 3 weeks ago, the most important decision I made each day was which hallway to mop first." A few smiles around the table, quickly suppressed. But my father and uncle understood something important about power. They saw firsthand how easily good intentions can lead to dangerous actions when there's no accountability. They risked everything, their careers, their freedom, ultimately my father's life, to prevent technology from being misused. He pauses, gathering his thoughts. I've read the technical reports. I don't understand all the science, but I understand enough to know that Rhodium 103 could change the world, for better or worse. The question isn't whether we should study it. Of course we should. The question is who decides how it's used and who benefits. Dr. Vance from DARPA leans forward. With all due respect, Mr. Reynolds, national security must be our primary concern. The Chinese and Russians would do anything to acquire this technology. I'm sure that's what General LeMay thought in 1962, Marcus counters. National security was his justification too. But he was willing to bypass elected civilian leadership to do what he thought was necessary. Where's the line? The room falls silent. Even Vance looks momentarily chastened. I'm not against military applications, Marcus clarifies, but they can't be the only applications, or even the primary ones. This has to be bigger than any one agency or interest. My uncle kept this material hidden for 60 years because he didn't trust the system to handle it responsibly. If we want to prove him wrong, we need transparency, civilian oversight, and a commitment to using this discovery to help people, not just build better weapons. Admiral Chen studies him thoughtfully. What would you suggest, specifically? Marcus hadn't expected to be asked for solutions. He glances at Sullivan, who gives him an encouraging nod. A public-private partnership, he says slowly, thinking it through. Government funding and security, but with university research teams included. Regular public reporting on progress. A diverse ethics committee with real authority, and a commitment that the first applications developed will be medical or environmental, not military. And you believe your uncle would approve of this approach? Dr. Harper asks. Marcus considers the journal entries he's read over the past weeks, the glimpses into his uncle's mind. My uncle was a patriot who believed in American ideals, not just American power. I think he'd want the Rhodium used to advance those ideals, to heal, to build, to improve lives. The military applications would be a means to protect those advancements, not an end in themselves. Admiral Chen nods, seemingly satisfied. Your perspective is valuable, Mr. Reynolds. We'd like you to continue as a regular advisor to the project if you're willing. Marcus thinks about his job at Eagle Point, the routine he's fought to maintain. But he also thinks about his responsibility to his father's and uncle's legacy. I can't relocate to Washington, he says, but I could visit regularly, consult on key decisions. We can make that work, Sullivan interjects. Regular video conferences, quarterly in-person meetings. Admiral Chen looks around the table. Any objections? There are none, though Vance's expression suggests resigned acceptance rather than enthusiasm. Then it's settled, Chen concludes. Project Daybreak will proceed with the balanced approach Mr. Reynolds has outlined. Dr. Sullivan, please work with him to formalize the oversight structure. As the meeting adjourns, various officials approach Marcus to introduce themselves. Dr. Kelsey from HHS is particularly enthusiastic about the medical applications, describing potential treatments for conditions from cancer to Alzheimer's. Even Dr. Vance grudgingly acknowledges the value of Marcus's perspective. When the room finally clears, only Sullivan, Harper, and Marcus remain. Well, Harper says with a grin, you've certainly made an impression. Not bad for a janitor. Marcus shrugs. I just said what seemed obvious. Sometimes the obvious needs saying, Sullivan remarks, especially in Washington. Harper checks his watch. I need to get back to the lab. We're running new tests on quantum entanglement rates tonight. His expression brightens with scientific excitement. The preliminary results are beyond anything we imagined. This material could literally change everything, Marcus. After Harper leaves, Sullivan turns to Marcus. You did well in there. Better than well. I felt out of place, Marcus admits. All those experts, and then there's me. That's exactly why you belong there, Sullivan counters. Those experts get lost in their specialties. They need someone who sees the bigger picture. She hesitates, then adds, I have something to show you. Not here. Somewhere more private. Sullivan drives them to a small Georgetown townhouse, elegant but understated. Her home, Marcus realizes as she unlocks the door. The interior reveals more about her than he's learned in their weeks of interaction. Tasteful artwork, overflowing bookshelves, a piano in the corner. Can I get you anything? She asks, moving toward the kitchen. Coffee? Something stronger? Coffee's fine, Marcus replies, studying a wall of photographs. Many show Sullivan with an older man he assumes is her father, David Sullivan. Family vacations, graduation ceremonies, casual moments captured in time. Sullivan returns with 2 mugs, follows his gaze to the photos. That's him, my dad. She points to a picture of herself as a teenager beside a distinguished-looking man with kind eyes. Physics professor at MIT, but he'd been SAC before that. Nuclear detection systems, like father, like daughter, Marcus observes, both dealing with national security secrets. She smiles wryly. I went into intelligence work straight out of college. Wanted to follow in his footsteps, I guess. But it wasn't until after he died that I learned about Granite Shadow. How? He left journals like your uncle. Not as detailed, but enough to piece things together. He'd been monitoring radiation signatures for years, looking for traces of radium. It was his personal mission, something he did off the books. When I found those journals, she shakes her head. It was like meeting a different person. The father I knew and the man who'd carried this secret for decades. Marcus understands completely. That same sense of discovering a hidden dimension to someone you thought you knew. Sullivan moves to a small home office, unlocks a drawer in her desk. I found this a few days ago while reviewing some of my father's personal effects that had been in storage. She hands Marcus a yellowed envelope. The handwriting on it is unfamiliar, but the name is unmistakable. Lieutenant James Reynolds. My father wrote to yours? Marcus asks, surprised. Apparently, the letter was never sent. Dad kept a draft. Marcus carefully opens the envelope, unfolds the paper inside. The letter is dated 1982, 20 years after the Cuban Missile Crisis, 2 years before his father's death. Dear James, it begins. It's been a long time since Sentinel Ridge. I hope this letter finds you well, though I understand the need to keep our distance. Bob updates me occasionally, never directly, always through channels we established. He tells me you have a son now, I have a daughter. Children who know nothing of what we did or why. Sometimes I wonder if that's a blessing or a curse. The letter continues, reminiscing about their time together during the crisis, expressing regret about the secrecy that had defined their lives since. I still monitor the signatures, as I'm sure Bob does too. Nothing so far, which is reassuring. LeMay retired years ago, but some of the others are still in positions of influence. They haven't forgotten, James, neither should we. The final paragraph catches in Marcus's throat. I often think about that night, the choice we made. I've never regretted it, not for a moment. When my daughter asks what I did in the service, I tell her I helped keep people safe. It's not the whole truth, but it's not a lie either. Perhaps someday she'll know the rest. Perhaps someday our children will understand why we live with these secrets. Until then, stay safe, old friend. David. Marcus folds the letter carefully, returns it to the envelope. Our fathers knew each other better than we realized. Sullivan nods, taking the letter back. They shared something profound, a moment when they chose country over career, principle over expedience. That creates a bond. She studies him thoughtfully. Perhaps it's why we worked well together from the start. History repeating itself in a way. There's something in her gaze that makes Marcus suddenly aware of the intimacy of the moment. Alone in her home, sharing family secrets, connected by their father's shared past. The professional distance between them seems to have narrowed without either noticing. His phone vibrates, breaking the moment. A text from Jamie, his son. Dad, when can I see the secret base? Mom says I have to ask you first. Marcus smiles, shows Sullivan the message. Dad duty calls. The most important job I have. How old is he? Sullivan asks. 12, lives with his mother in Pittsburgh. I get him every other weekend, school holidays. Must be difficult being apart. Marcus nods. It is, but we make it work. He's a good kid, smart, asks a million questions. Takes after his father that way, Sullivan says with a smile. Asking the right questions at the right time. Marcus checks his watch. It's getting late and I have a 3-hour drive back to Pinterest. Early shift tomorrow. You could stay in the city tonight, Sullivan suggests. I have a guest room. Or the committee could arrange a hotel. The offer is tempting, but Marcus shakes his head. Thanks, but I should get back. Routine helps keep me grounded. Sullivan walks him to the door. Next committee meeting is in 2 weeks. I'll send you the details. I'll be there, Marcus promises. And Sullivan, thank you for showing me the letter. For everything, really. Their eyes meet, and for a moment something unspoken passes between them, an acknowledgement of the unusual bond they've formed through extraordinary circumstances. Until next time, Reynolds, she says finally. Marcus drives north through the night, the city lights fading behind him as he enters the Pennsylvania countryside. The radio plays softly, a late-night talk show discussing the Granite Shadow revelations. The story has captured public imagination, the Cold War conspiracy, the heroic officers who stopped it, the miraculous material finally coming to light after 60 years. His own name is mentioned, and Marcus reaches to change the station. He's had enough of celebrity. The next channel plays classical music, something gentle and contemplative. Better. He thinks about the meeting, about Project Daybreak and the potential of Rhodium 103, about Sullivan and the unexpected connection between their families, about his son's text message and the normal, everyday concerns that ground him despite everything that's happened. By the time he reaches Pinarest, it's past midnight. The town sleeps, quiet and unchanged. His apartment welcomes him with its familiar simplicity. He sets his alarm for 5:00 a.m. and falls into bed, dreaming of quantum particles and father's legacies and Sullivan's thoughtful eyes. 2 days later, Marcus receives a call from Sullivan while he's replacing a broken window lock in the science wing. We have a situation, she says without preamble. Blackwood's out. What? How? Last I heard, he was facing multiple federal charges, house arrest pending trial. His lawyers argued he's not a flight risk, and apparently the judge agreed. The GPS monitoring the court ordered is a joke for someone with his resources. Marcus sets down a screwdriver, moves to a quieter corner of the hallway. What does this mean for Project Daybreak? Security's been increased at all research sites, but that's not why I'm calling. There's been unusual activity around Sentinel Ridge. Satellite picked up vehicles on the access road yesterday. But there's nothing left there, Marcus says. Your team removed all the rhodium and documentation weeks ago. That's what concerns me. Blackwood knows that. So why is he interested in an empty facility? Marcus thinks about his uncle's journal, the entries he's been studying in his spare time. What if there's something else? My uncle was thorough, paranoid even. He might have had other hiding places, other insurance policies we haven't found. That's what I'm afraid of, Sullivan agrees. I'd like to send a team to do a complete sweep of the facility. With your permission, of course. It's still your property. Marcus hesitates only briefly. Do it. But I want to be there. I figured you would. We can have a helicopter pick you up after your shift ends. This is priority one, Reynolds. The principal will love that, Marcus says dryly. A helicopter landing in the parking lot. Sullivan's laugh is brief but genuine. Welcome to the world of national security, Reynolds. Normal rules don't always apply. After hanging up, Marcus returns to the window lock, but his mind is elsewhere. What could Blackwood be looking for at Sentinel Ridge? What secrets might still be hidden in that abandoned facility? The bell rings, students flood the hallway. Marcus nods to them absently, his thoughts racing ahead to the afternoon, to the return to Sentinel Ridge, to whatever new revelation awaits. The mundane and the extraordinary continue their strange dance in his life, neither quite gaining the upper hand. As he tightens the last screw on the window lock, Marcus wonders if this is how his father felt all those years, living an ordinary life while carrying extraordinary secrets. The weight of legacy, the burden of knowing, the responsibility to truth. Some duties are never forgotten. The helicopter touches down in the Eagle Point High School parking lot at 3:45 p.m., causing exactly the stir Marcus had predicted. Students press against windows. Teachers step outside, phones raised to capture video. Principal Garfield stands frozen in disbelief as Marcus walks calmly toward the aircraft, toolbox still in hand. Sullivan is waiting inside, dressed once again in tactical gear. Two operators sit in the pilot and co-pilot seats, another in the rear compartment with an array of equipment. Quite an entrance, Marcus comments as he buckles in. Sorry about that, Sullivan replies, not looking particularly sorry. Time is a factor. As the helicopter lifts off, Marcus catches a glimpse of the crowd below, Principal Garfield's stunned face among them. He suppresses a smile. Some disruption to routine can be satisfying. The flight to Sentinel Ridge takes less than 20 minutes. revealing the landscape from a perspective Marcus has never seen. The wooded hills, the winding roads, the small towns nestled in valleys, all laid out like a living map. The facility itself appears suddenly, a gray scar in the green forest, its outbuildings arranged in patterns that seem more deliberate from above. The helicopter lands in what was once a parade ground, now overgrown with weeds pushing through cracked concrete. A team of operators has already established a perimeter, their vehicles parked discreetly among the trees. Colonel Matthews greets them as they disembark. The man who helped extract them from Blackwood's underground facility looks different in daylight, older, more weathered, but with the same steady competence. Dr. Sullivan, Mr. Reynolds, he acknowledges. Satellite shows the last of Blackwood's people left the area about 3 hours ago. We've done an initial sweep of the main building. Nothing obvious has been disturbed. Did they find what they were looking for? Sullivan asks. Matthews shrugs. No way to know. They were here for approximately 6 hours. Entered multiple buildings, seemed to focus on the northeastern quadrant toward the end. Marcus frowns. That's where the backup generators are. Underground level, beneath Storage Building 3. He leads them to a nondescript concrete structure set apart from the main complex. Inside, metal stairs descend to a lower level where massive diesel generators sit silent. The equipment is old but meticulously maintained, just like everything else at Sentinel Ridge. Your uncle kept the power systems operational all these years? Sullivan asks, running her hand along a control panel. Marcus nods. He was thorough. Had the diesel delivered quarterly, did all the maintenance himself. The electric bill was paid through an account that automatically draws from a trust he set up. Why? Matthews asked the obvious question. Once the facility was decommissioned, why maintain power? Marcus has been pondering this since reading the relevant journal entries. I think he wanted to be ready, in case the evidence ever needed to come to light. The climate control systems, the security measures, they all needed power. Sullivan directs her team to examine the generators more closely. They appear untouched, but she's taking no chances. Meanwhile, Marcus studies the room, seeing it with new eyes. If his uncle had hidden something else here, where would it be? The answer comes to him suddenly. Not here, not in the obvious place. Sullivan, he calls. The main electrical panel, where is it? One of the operators points to a metal cabinet against the far wall. Standard breaker panel from the looks of it. Marcus approaches, opens the panel door. Inside are rows of circuit breakers, each labeled in his uncle's precise handwriting. Main building, communications, barracks, cold storage, security systems. One label catches his eye. Emergency protocol. That switch has a lock on it, Sullivan observes, leaning in for a closer look. Key operated. Marcus reaches into his pocket, pulls out the key he found in his uncle's journal. It fits perfectly. When he turns it, the lock releases with a soft click. Step back, Matthews warns. We don't know what that activates. My uncle wouldn't booby-trap his own facility, Marcus says with more confidence than he feels. Besides, this is what Blackwood was looking for. I'm sure of it. He flips the switch. For a moment, nothing happens. Then a low hum begins somewhere deep in the facility, growing steadily louder. Lights that had been dormant flicker to life. Throughout the complex, systems are waking up, Sullivan says, checking readings on a tablet one of her operators hands her. Power surge in the main building, focused on the command center. They hurry back to the central facility, through the reception area, down the corridor to the circular command room Marcus first explored weeks ago. The room has transformed. Screens that had been dark now glow with life. The central console pulses with lights, and a mechanical whirring comes from beneath the floor. With a pneumatic hiss, a section of the floor in the center of the room begins to rise. A hidden platform concealed beneath the command center all this time. As it locks into place, Marcus sees what it contains. A second container, identical to the one that held the rhodium cylinders, but smaller. This is what Blackwood was looking for, Sullivan breathes. A second cache. The container's display panel lights up, initiating the same scanning sequence Marcus witnessed before. A beam of light sweeps the room, passes over each person present, then stops on Marcus. The beam turns green. DNA confirmation. Reynolds, MJ. The mechanical voice is the same too. Voice print required for final authorization. Marcus steps forward, speaks clearly. Marcus James Reynolds. The container processes for a moment, then identity confirmed. Welcome, Lieutenant Reynolds. The front panel slides open, revealing not rhodium cylinders this time, but a single metal case in what appears to be an old-fashioned film projector. Harper should see this, Sullivan says, already on her secure phone. Whatever your uncle hid here, it was important enough for separate security protocols. Marcus carefully removes the metal case, sets it on the command console. The latches open easily, revealing dozens of film reels, each in a protective canister, meticulously labeled. Operation Mongoose, 1961-62, he reads from one label. Project Northwoods, 1962. Corona Reconnaissance, 1962. The Cuban Connection, 1961-63. These are intelligence operations, Matthews says, looking over Marcus's shoulder. Black projects from the early Cold War. Most still classified, even today. Why would my uncle have these? Sullivan examines another canister. These aren't just operations. They're evidence. Your uncle was collecting proof of unauthorized actions, contingency plans that bypass civilian oversight. Granite Shadow wasn't an isolated incident. Marcus picks up another film canister, this one labeled simply American Eagles, 1962-75. A note in his uncle's handwriting is affixed. The network. All members. Insurance file only. Sullivan takes it carefully. If this is what I think it is, she looks at Marcus, her expression grave. Your uncle identified everyone involved in the attempted coup, not just LeMay, but all his supporters in the military, intelligence community, even civilian government. Names that never came to light, Matthews adds. People who may have gone on to positions of greater power. Marcus understands the implications. My uncle kept this separate from the rhodium evidence, even more secure. This wasn't just about Granite Shadow. It was about the entire shadow network that enabled it. The projector, Sullivan suggests. Can we? Matthews is already setting it up, connecting it to a power source, threading the American Eagles film through its mechanisms. The lights dim automatically, and a beam of light projects onto the blank wall of the command center. The film begins with a simple title card, American Eagles, The Ascension Network. Then a series of photographs, documents, meeting minutes, recorded conversations transcribed in text. Names appear, generals, admirals, intelligence officials, congressmen, industrial leaders. A web of connections, meticulously documented, spanning more than a decade. Jesus, Matthews whispers, if even half of this is verified. It would rewrite Cold War history, Sullivan finishes, and implicate some very powerful families. Marcus watches as familiar names scroll past, including Blackwood, Richard, technical lead, Granite Shadow. But there are others, names he recognizes from current politics, from corporate boardrooms, from recent headlines. This is why Blackwood came back, he realizes, not for more rhodium. For this, the evidence that would destroy not just his father's legacy, but an entire network of power and influence that continues to this day. Sullivan's phone buzzes. She checks it, her expression hardening. Blackwood's GPS monitor just went dark. He's in the wind. Matthews is already issuing orders to his team, establishing a wider security perimeter around Sentinel Ridge. He'll come here, Marcus says with certainty. He knows what's at stake now. Let him try, Sullivan replies, her hand moving to the sidearm at her hip. We'll be ready. As Matthews coordinates the facility's defense and Sullivan arranges for secure transport of the films, Marcus stands in the center of his uncle's command room, watching the evidence unspool against the wall. Faces and names and connections, the hidden architecture of power laid bare after 60 years of secrecy. His father's words echo in his mind. The Constitution doesn't defend itself. That's our job, all of us, every generation. The burden has passed to him now, along with the responsibility to ensure that these truths finally see the light of day, no matter who might try to keep them buried, no matter the cost. Outside, the sun begins to set over Sentinel Ridge, casting long shadows across the abandoned facility that has protected its secrets for so long. In the gathering darkness, Marcus Reynolds prepares for the final confrontation with forces set in motion long before his birth. Forces that killed his father, isolated his uncle, and now threaten to silence him. Some duties are never forgotten. Some truths demand to be told. Some battles must be fought even against impossible odds. And sometimes the most ordinary people make the most extraordinary defenders of truth. Night falls quickly in the Pennsylvania hills. Sentinel Ridge transforms in darkness, its abandoned structures taking on an ominous quality as shadows deepen and security lights create islands of harsh illumination. Sullivan's team has established a defensive perimeter, operators positioned at strategic points throughout the complex, communications gear set up in the command center. Marcus watches from the central platform as technicians carefully transfer the film reels to specialized containers for transport. Each canister is logged, photographed, sealed with tamper-evident tape. The methodical process feels right. His uncle's meticulous documentation deserving of equally careful handling. Sullivan approaches, her expression grim. Satellite shows 3 vehicles approaching from the southwest access road. ETA 7 minutes. Blackwood? Almost certainly. The timing's too perfect to be coincidence. Matthews joins them, checking his sidearm with practiced efficiency. My team is in position. Extraction helicopter is standing by, 15 minutes out. As soon as the evidence is secure, we move. Sullivan turns to Marcus. You should go with the first transport. This could get dangerous. I'm staying, Marcus says firmly. This is my property, my family's legacy. I won't run. Sullivan looks like she wants to argue, but nods instead. Stay close to me or Matthews. These people aren't playing games. A technician calls Sullivan over to examine something on one of the film reels. Marcus takes the moment to step away, moving to his uncle's desk. The command chair, Colonel Reynolds' chair, sits empty, waiting. Marcus settles into it, feeling strangely connected to the man who sat here during the most dangerous days of the Cold War. The desk surface is clear now, the journal and photograph long since removed for evidence. But Marcus's hands find the hidden compartment automatically, fingers tracing the familiar outline. To his surprise, it slides open. Inside is a single envelope he hadn't noticed before, marked with his name in his uncle's handwriting. With a glance to ensure Sullivan is still occupied, Marcus opens it. Inside is a handwritten note in a small electronic device no larger than a thumb drive. Marcus, the note reads, if you're reading this, you've found the second cache. The American Eagle's file is insurance, a record of those who would place power above principle. But the real weapon against them isn't exposure. It's truth. The device enclosed contains the complete Sentinel Ridge database, every communication, every order, every response during October 1962. I've kept it updated with new connections as I discovered them. The password is the date we both know, the day your father chose country over career. Use it wisely. Some battles can't be won with force alone. Uncle Robert. Marcus stares at the small device. A complete record, continuously updated until his uncle's death. Not just historical evidence, but current connections, recent activities. The full scope of the shadow network that began with Ascension. He pockets both note and device just as Sullivan returns. 3 vehicles have stopped at the main gate, she informs him. 2 SUVs and what looks like a private security transport. Thermal imaging shows 8, maybe 9 individuals. Can your team handle that many? Marcus asks. Sullivan's smile is tight. This isn't my first rodeo, Reynolds. Besides, they don't know we are expecting them. Element of surprise is ours. Marcus nods, but his mind is on the device in his pocket. Should he tell her? Before he can decide, Matthews' voice crackles over the radio. Movement at the perimeter. They've breached the gate, approaching from multiple angles. Professional formation. Sullivan draws her sidearm. Stay behind me, she tells Marcus, moving toward a more defensible position near the command console. The technicians hurry to finish packing the evidence, their movements now urgent rather than methodical. The radio crackles again. Contact east entrance. Engaging, the distant sound of gunfire echoes through the facility. Sullivan keys her radio. Status report. 2 down, non-lethal, Matthews responds. The others have pulled back, regrouping. Wait! A new sound cuts through the night. The whine of a small engine, growing rapidly louder. Drone, Matthews shouts over the radio. Take cover! Sullivan grabs Marcus, pulling him down behind the command console just as the windows of the command center shatter inward. A small aerial drone hovers in the opening, a cylindrical object dropping from its undercarriage. Gas! Sullivan yells, reaching for her tactical mask. But the canister hits the floor before she can secure hers, erupting in a cloud of white vapor that rapidly fills the room. Marcus holds his breath, eyes stinging as the gas envelops them. Through watering eyes, he sees Sullivan slump beside him, unconscious. The technicians are already down. His lungs burn with the need for oxygen. The room spins, darkness encroaching at the edges of his vision. The last thing he sees before consciousness fades is a figure in a gas mask entering through the broken window, moving purposefully toward the evidence containers. Marcus awakens to the steady beep of a heart monitor. His mouth is dry, his throat raw, his head pounding with the worst headache he's ever experienced. He blinks against harsh fluorescent lighting, trying to make sense of his surroundings. Hospital room. Private from the looks of it. Expensive equipment. A window shows nighttime city lights spread out below. Washington, D.C., he guesses from the distinctive pattern. How did he get here? The last thing he remembers is the command center at Sentinel Ridge, the gay Sullivan collapsing beside him. Sullivan. Where is she? What happened to the evidence? He tries to sit up, but his body feels leaden, uncooperative. An IV line runs into his arm, delivering clear fluid from a hanging bag. As his vision clears further, he notices a figure sitting in a chair by the window, silhouetted against the city lights. "You're awake," Alexander Blackwood says, rising smoothly. "That's good. The gas sometimes has lingering effects, but the doctors assured me you'd make a full recovery." He approaches the bed, impeccably dressed as always, looking more like a concerned visitor than a fugitive responsible for a military-grade assault. "Where am I?" Marcus manages, his voice a rasp. "Georgetown University Hospital. Private wing. You've been unconscious for approximately 18 hours. Sullivan? Dr. Sullivan is fine. Recovering in another room along with the rest of her team. Military-grade incapacitating agent. Effective, but temporary. No permanent damage." Marcus struggles to focus through the lingering fog in his brain. "Why are you here? Why am I not in custody?" Blackwood's smile is thin. Because officially, none of this happened. No assault on a government facility, no theft of classified material, no kidnapping of federal agents. Quite a mess to cover up, but I still have resources at my disposal. The evidence, Marcus realizes with a sinking feeling. The film reels. "The American Eagles file is in my possession," Blackwood confirms, reading his expression, along with the rhodium samples Dr. Sullivan had secured. "A successful operation, all things considered." "You won't get away with this," Marcus says, the words sounding hollow even to his own ears. Blackwood settles into a chair beside the bed. "I already have, Mr. Reynolds. The evidence has been secured, the facility cleaned, the official record adjusted. By tomorrow morning, the Joint Committee will receive word that Project Daybreak has been consolidated under a new classified directive. Dr. Sullivan will receive a lateral transfer to a different division. You'll return to your life in pen arrest with a generous consultation fee and a strong recommendation to focus on your janitorial duties." "What about the truth? What about what my father and uncle died for?" "Truth," Blackwood sighs, "is rarely as straightforward as we'd like it to be. Your uncle and father thought they were protecting America by hiding the rhodium. In reality, they set technological development back by decades. Do you have any idea what we could have accomplished with that material over the last 60 years? The advances in medicine, energy, computing? They were preventing a coup," Marcus counters, fighting to keep his thoughts clear. "Military officers trying to override civilian authority. They were preventing decisive action during a moment of national crisis," Blackwood corrects. "The Soviet missiles in Cuba represented an existential threat. Kennedy's hesitation could have cost millions of American lives. That wasn't their call to make. The Constitution is not a suicide pact," Blackwood interrupts. "Extraordinary times require extraordinary measures. LeMay understood that. My father understood that. Even your father and uncle understood it on some level, or they would have exposed everything back in 1962 instead of hiding the evidence." Marcus watches Blackwood carefully, mind racing despite the lingering effects of the key. The older man is calm, confident, a man who believes victory is already his. But there's something else in his expression, a flicker of curiosity, perhaps even respect. "Why are you telling me this? Why not just let me wake up with a cover story, like everyone else? Blackwood studies him for a moment. Because you've impressed me, Mr. Reynolds. Your loyalty to your family's legacy, your principles in the face of extraordinary pressure. You remind me of your uncle, stubborn, principled, unwilling to bend even when pragmatism would dictate otherwise. He leans forward slightly. I'm offering you a choice, Marcus. A real choice, not the illusion the Joint Committee gave you. Work with me. Help me understand the Rodeum. Your DNA unlocked the container just as it did the archive. There may be other safeguards your uncle built into the technology that only a Reynolds can bypass. And if I refuse, then you go back to mopping floors and the world moves on without you. The Rodeum research continues under proper supervision. The American Eagle's file remains secured. History follows the course it was always meant to take. Marcus thinks of the device in his pocket, assuming it's still there, assuming Blackwood's people didn't find it when they brought him here. The complete Sentinel Ridge database. The truth his uncle preserved all these years. I need time to think, he says finally. Of course, Blackwood stands. The doctors say you'll be released tomorrow morning. I'll have a car waiting to take you wherever you wish to go. Consider my offer. Unlike some, I believe in second chances. He moves toward the door, then pauses. Oh, and Mr. Reynolds, the contents of your pockets are in the bedside drawer. Your uncle's note made for interesting reading, but the device was encrypted beyond even our best efforts. Another example of Robert Reynolds' paranoia, I suppose. The door closes behind him with a soft click, leaving Marcus alone with the steady beep of the heart monitor and the weight of an impossible choice. Dawn finds Marcus standing on the hospital roof watching the sun rise over the Capitol. His body still aches from the gas, but his mind is clear now, focused with new purpose. The device is in his hands, small and unassuming, the key to everything, if his uncle's note is to be believed. The real weapon against those who would place power above principle. His father's voice seems to whisper on the morning breeze. The Constitution doesn't defend itself. The roof access door opens behind him. Sullivan appears, looking pale but determined. Her left arm is bandaged where the IV had been, matching Marcus's own. I figured I'd find you up here, she says, joining him at the railing. Needed some air myself. Are you okay? Marcus asks. Nothing wounded but my pride, Sullivan responds with a grimace. And my career, probably. Blackwood's people hit us perfectly. Professional operation, military precision. They knew exactly when and where to strike. Marcus studies her. You think you have a leak? Sullivan's expression darkens. I think Blackwood's network runs deeper than we realized. The American Eagle's file, he got all of it? Every reel, Marcus confirms. But not everything. He shows her the device, explains his uncle's note. A complete database, Sullivan breathes. Updated until his death. Names, connections, operations. If we can access it, the password is the date my father made his choice, Marcus says. October 27, 1962. Sullivan shakes her head. Too obvious. Your uncle was more careful than that. The specific date would be the first thing anyone would try. Marcus thinks back to his father's letter, to the family history he's been piecing together. Not October 27th then. That was when they secured the Rodeum, but the real choice came later. He pulls out his phone, opens a secure browser, searches for a specific date. There, an announcement in the Army Times, December 1st, 1962. Lieutenant James Reynolds honorably discharged from service, the day his father officially ended his military career. 12:01, 1962. Marcus types into the device's small interface. The screen remains blank. Sullivan frowns. Try a different format. Military notation. 11-21962. Nothing. Marcus stares at the device, frustration mounting. What date would both he and his uncle know? What day would be significant enough to... Wait, not the day his father left the service. The day Marcus was born. The new life that came from his father's choice. He types in his birth date, 03151980. The device lights up, display filling with file directories and access protocols. You did it, Sullivan says, leaning closer to see the small screen. It's decrypting. The process takes several minutes, progress bars slowly filling as decades of data become accessible. When it completes, the main directory appears. Hundreds of files organized by year, by operation, by individual name. Sullivan pulls out her own secure phone. I need to call this in. My direct supervisor, no one else. If Blackwood has people in the Pentagon, make the call, Marcus agrees. But first, look at this. He's opened a file labeled Eagle Prime Current Operations. Inside is a detailed tracking of recent activities, shell companies, financial transactions, political appointments, technological acquisitions. At the center of the web is Blackwood Defense Technologies, but spreading outward are connections to government agencies, congressional committees, multinational corporations. This isn't just historical, Sullivan says, scrolling through the data. This is active, current. Your uncle was tracking their operations until the day he died, and he kept it updated specifically for this moment, Marcus adds, for when the truth would finally come out. Sullivan makes her call, speaking in clipped, coded phrases that convey urgency without specific details. When she finishes, she turns back to Marcus. We have a secure facility 6 blocks from here. We can be there in 15 minutes. My supervisor is activating an emergency protocol, trusted personnel only, off the official channels. Marcus hesitates, looking at the device in his hand. Once they leave this roof, events will be set in motion that can't be stopped. The American Eagles network has existed in the shadows for 60 years, accumulating power, influence, connections. They won't surrender quietly. Sullivan reads his expression. Having second thoughts? Not about doing it, Marcus says, about what happens after. To the country, when people learn that some of our most respected institutions have been compromised all this time. To the people who believed they were serving a greater good, even if they were wrong. Sullivan's hand covers his, warm and steady. The truth isn't always comfortable, Marcus, but secrets like this, they're poison to a democracy. Your father and uncle knew that. They preserved the evidence for a reason. She's right, and Marcus knows it. He pockets the device, nods once, let's go. The secure facility turns out to be a nondescript office building near DuPont Circle. Its ground floor occupied by a coffee shop and boutique clothing store. Sullivan leads Marcus through a service entrance, down a hallway to a Freyite elevator that requires both key card and biometric authentication. The elevator descends several floors, opening onto a space that looks more like a tech startup than a government facility. Open plan, comfortable furnishings, wall-mounted displays, and advanced communications equipment. Welcome to the workshop, Sullivan says. Special Projects Division's off-the-books operations center. Only senior agents with highest clearance even know it exists. A tall African-American man in his 60s approaches, his bearing unmistakably military despite the casual clothing. Director Hayes, Sullivan greets him. Thank you for the rapid response. Hayes nods, his attention already on Marcus. Mr. Reynolds, your uncle's reputation precedes you. He extends his hand. Colonel Marcus Hayes, USF, retired. I worked with Robert briefly in the 80s. Never knew the whole story until now. Marcus shakes the offered hand, studying the older man. Can we trust him? A voice in his head asks. Can we trust anyone with stakes this high? As if reading his thoughts, Hayes smiles slightly. Skepticism is healthy, Mr. Reynolds. I'd be concerned if you weren't questioning everything right now. But perhaps this will help. He leads them to a conference room where several people are already gathered. Among them, to Marcus's surprise, is Harper. His legs still in a cast, but his expression brightening at the sight of Marcus and Sullivan. You made it, he says with evident relief. When I heard about the attack on Sentinel Ridge, we're fine, Sullivan assures him. What are you doing here? Director Hayes called me directly, said it was about the Rhodium 103 research and possible compromise of Project Daybreak. Marcus, you look like you've been through hell. Gas exposure, Marcus explains briefly. I'll live. But the evidence, the American Eagles file, Blackwood has it. Not all of it, Harper says with a significant look toward Hayes. The colonel gestures for everyone to sit. For the past 3 weeks, we've been conducting our own investigation into Alexander Blackwood and his connections, based on initial findings from Sentinel Ridge. Dr. Harper's analysis of the Rhodium raised red flags about potential military applications that diverged from the committee's approved research parameters. Weapons development, Sullivan guesses, despite the Oversight Committee's directives. Hayes nods. Blackwood may have been under house arrest, but his company continued operating. We identified several research facilities conducting unauthorized experiments with rhodium samples. How, Marcus asks. Sullivan secured the only known samples after the farmhouse raid. Not quite, Harper admits. When we first analyzed the material at the Naval Research Lab, I created a control sample, security protocol for materials of this significance. Only my direct supervisor and I knew about it. And when Blackwood's connections in the Pentagon became apparent, Hayes continues, Dr. Harper contacted me through back channels. I've been tracking the American Eagles network myself for nearly 20 years, ever since I stumbled across anomalous funding patterns in Air Force Black projects. Marcus takes this in, hope rising cautiously. So you have evidence too? Fragments, Hayes says. Financial trails, personnel transfers, security clearance irregularities. Enough to raise questions, not enough to prove conspiracy. Until now, he turns to Marcus expectantly. Sullivan mentioned your uncle left you something that might break this case wide open. Marcus places the device on the table, the complete Sentinel Ridge database. Every communication, every order, every connection from 1962 to the present. My uncle kept it updated his entire life. Hayes stares at the device, understanding its significance immediately. If this contains what you say it does, it's the key to everything, Sullivan finishes. Names, dates, operations, the entire network, from its inception to current activities. But Blackwood has the physical evidence, Harper points out. The film reels the original documentation. Without those, it's just data with no physical proof to back it up. Not necessarily, Marcus says, an idea forming. My uncle was thorough, paranoid even. He wouldn't have kept all his evidence in one place, no matter how secure. The film reels, the archive at Sentinel Ridge, those were obvious, almost too obvious. What are you thinking? Sullivan asks. The National Archives, Marcus explains. The evidence my father hid there, that wasn't everything either. It was another breadcrumb, another piece of the puzzle. My uncle's journal mentioned other secure locations, places only family would know to look. Hayes leans forward. Where? Marcus thinks about his childhood, about the rare visits from his uncle, the places they went together. One memory surfaces, a fishing trip when he was 9, just after his father's death. Uncle Robert taking him to a cabin in the mountains, showing him how to cast a line, how to clean a catch. And something else, a hidden safe beneath the floorboards, opened when Uncle Robert thought Marcus was asleep. There's a cabin, Marcus says slowly, in the Alleghenies. My uncle took me there once after my father died. He had a hidden safe there. I saw him accessing it, though he didn't know I was watching. Can you find it again? Hayes asks. Marcus nods. I think so. It's been over 30 years, but some landmarks don't change. It could be a trap, Sullivan warns. If Blackwood has been watching you, he might know about the cabin, might be expecting us to go there. Hayes considers this. We'll need a diversion, something to keep Blackwood's attention elsewhere while we check the cabin. I have an idea, Harper offers. The rhodium control sample. We can leak information suggesting we're moving it to a more secure facility. Make it seem like we're consolidating what evidence we have left. Blackwood would prioritize securing the rhodium over watching a decades-old cabin, Sullivan agrees, especially if he believes he already has all the documentary evidence. Hayes nods decisively. We'll set it up. Dr. Harper will coordinate the fake transfer. Agent Sullivan, you'll accompany Mr. Reynolds to the cabin. I'll assemble a small team of trusted operators for support, people outside the regular chain of command, in case Blackwood has resources watching the usual channels. They spend the next hour planning, reviewing satellite imagery of the area around the cabin, establishing secure communications protocols, preparing equipment. Throughout, Marcus feels a strange calm descending. After weeks of revelations and reversals, the path forward is finally clear. This is what his father and uncle prepared for, the moment when the full truth would finally emerge. The culmination of 60 years of waiting, watching, preserving the evidence until the right time. As the meeting concludes and the team disperses to their assigned tasks, Sullivan pulls Marcus aside. Are you sure about this? She asks quietly. Once we start down this road, there's no turning back. Blackwood and his network, they won't go quietly. They've had decades to entrench themselves, to build defenses against exactly this kind of exposure. Marcus thinks of his father's letter, of his uncle's lifelong vigil, of the trust they placed in him without ever knowing if he would be ready to accept it. I'm sure, he says simply, this is what they saved the evidence for, not just to reveal what happened in 1962, but to protect against it happening again. The truth has to come out, no matter what. Sullivan studies him, then nods once, satisfied. Helicopter leaves in 30 minutes. Pack light, move fast. As she walks away, Marcus feels the weight of the small device in his pocket. The real weapon, his uncle had called it. Not the rhodium, not the physical evidence, but the truth itself, meticulously documented, preserved against all odds, waiting for the light. Outside, the sun climbs higher over Washington, illuminating the monuments and memorials to American ideals. Somewhere in that city, Alexander Blackwood believes he has won, that 60 years of secrets will remain buried, that power will once again prevail over principle. He's wrong, and Marcus Reynolds, school janitor and heir to a legacy of quiet heroism, is about to prove it. The final confrontation awaits, not in the halls of power or secret underground facilities, but in a forgotten cabin in the mountains, the last repository of a truth too important to remain hidden any longer.